Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning. Last day.
Yeah, it's been a long month.
It is. It is. I think I do love this format though. It's really cool that we have people from all over the
hmm
region, with different perspectives and different, trainers. I think it's pretty cool. But it does make for a long month. Yep. Hopefully,
And
it will propel you to next month and you'll just be lead genning
eh,
during this block, right?
exactly. Yep. Yep.
Hey, Miss Susan. I'm gonna make you
Hello.
I'm gonna make you a you like to drive your slides, right? I'm gonna make you a co-host.
Sure.
Um
Susan, you do such a great job with your class. Oh, there you
didn't
are.
hear you. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you, Susan. You do such a great
Oh,
presentation.
thank you.
It's easy. You insightful.
I
So thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I second that.
Hey, your hair looks great today. I like that.
Thank you. It's so dry because of the winter. If
Oh, it's
I
crazy.
wash it every day, it gets really because it's coarse anyway, it's
Yeah,
curly, so it just turns to hay. So
I'm
yeah.
with you. I'm ready for spring.
Yeah. So
So ready
um
for spring.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have, I can share my
You
screen.
should be able to. Yep. Yep. And Tim will come on after the quick start and we'll help with the chat and
Okay, awesome.
anything else you need today, and I'll put us on Facebook.
That sounds great. And I'm so bad with time.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
don't always look at the chat, and I didn't have any kind of bathroom break the last time.
Yeah. Okay.
So I totally forgot about it. So yeah, if you see someone in there, or if I'm getting really long into it, we need a break, just have some speak up.
Yeah, so I think we've noticed that people around 10:30, between 10:30 and 11, people start to message me that they are we taking a break? So they need to get up and get, a bio break and get a cup of coffee and stretch their legs. So I can
Okay,
certainly keep an eye on that for you. And
perfect.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, once you get rolling, it's hard. I know I used to teach classes for the state of New Hampshire for teacher certification, and it would be like an all day class. We'd be like 4 hours in and be like, excuse
Can we
me.
have a break?
Yeah. Be like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. So yeah.
Awesome. And let me see. Yeah, and so we have an office condo in Dover, but I'm at my home office, so the lighting's not as good, but we get through it. But I'm too loud to be doing this with John and Ryan in the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
John's like,
Well,
"It's a little distracting. Could you do that from home?"
oh, that's funny. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of flexible workspace right now anyway. I mean,
Oh,
my
yeah.
kids are remote learning still.
Mhm.
Um, they just sent an email though that may be changing
Ooh,
after February vacation. So I'm really hopeful because they're just, it's getting hard being home.
it
So,
is. It is. How
yeah.
old are your kids?
My youngest just turned 10 and my oldest is 11,
Yeah,
12. Yeah, just turned 12 in June. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. My daughter is 15, and she does get to go into school 2 mornings a week
Yeah.
because she's in a culinary class.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she loves it. And
Yeah.
so if you're in a one of those types of classes, they get to go in twice a week for just that class. And it's been a godsend for her just to have that little bit of time mentally to go,
Yeah.
but to go in just for, it's an hour and a half twice a week.
Yeah, we've maintained basketball for our kids because for that exact reason. I mean, we only had 3 kids at practice, I think on Tuesday because kids have been sick and whatever, but just that's the only access they have to their friends at all.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, well, and every time they think they're gonna be able to go in, like, they're like, "Okay, so we're gonna have this cohort come in," and then they're like, "Sorry, we have another case. Everyone has to stay home tomorrow." Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's bananas.
Yeah.
So,
Dover is supposed to be starting in March, having all of their elementary schools go back full, like,
yeah, that's what they were talking about, in with the email that we got this morning. So, I mean, I hope so, because especially my little one, like the other day, I walked in and she had all her like dollies on the couch. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm watching a show with my girls."
oh,
I was like, "That's adorable and sad,"
it's it's
like,
it's it's funny and sad all at the same time. I'm laughing, I'm crying. I don't know which
yeah,
emoji to use right
yeah,
now, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, they need it.
yeah.
They need it.
All right, 8:55. We're doing good. People are rolling in.
Okay.
We need like elevator music.
I know, right?
Like
I
do
think
do 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 do
I
do
think
do.
I know I'm gonna grab another water here because I know I'm gonna start needing it.
Yeah, I might go grab my coffee while people are coming in and I'll be right back and get us on Facebook.
Erin, your hair looks fabulous this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm putting us on Facebook right now for those in the Facebook world.
Fantastic. Oops.
Sorry, making noise. Yeah, contract clause. And here we go. All right. And we are live. And it's 9:02. We have Susan Kenyon with us today for our last class. You made it to the end. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Hopefully you all have some business that you have generated through this last month and some habits for your business that are going to carry you through to the next month and the next month after that. We'll be back at Ignite in March, I think, regionally. So we'll be doing this again in March. So hopefully this class will carry you until then. And you can check out the recordings. We're also going to be back tomorrow for a quick Facebook class. Our Market Center tech trainer is going to join us for a little while, and then Tim and I will mastermind with you if you have time at 9 o'clock, the same channel tomorrow for Zoom. And we're going to touch on all the Facebook questions that we've gotten the last month. So, and mastermind a little together around that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Susan, who's going to take us from contract to close.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. And thank you guys for joining me again today. And congratulations, you've made it through to the end of Ignite. Just a fantastic job to commit yourselves to learning. So today we are going to talk about contract to close, which is my favorite part of our job. And, we always start with, the growing. I love this slide because we do have to remember that we have to work on growing our business before we can run our business. So you've done a great job. You've done your lead generating. You've talked to buyers. You've talked to sellers. You made your listing appointments. You made your buyer presentations. You're previewing real estate. And then, you get to the fun part where you can say, congratulations, you're under contract. So exciting. So we're going to jump over to the right side of the slide and talk about running your business. I know you've already gone through, market seller listings, show buyers houses. Now we get to negotiate and then negotiating contracts. And so today we're going to talk about negotiating contracts. We're going to talk about transaction management to closing, vendor management, and compliance, which is also near and dear to my heart. I love contracts, so I think that's probably why the contract to close is near and dear to me. For those of you that don't know me, I am in partnership with my husband. We're a husband wife team, spouses selling houses. So if there's any of others out there and you ever have any questions on that, or you think you might want to bring a spouse into this business, always feel free to give me a call. Happy to share. We practice in New Hampshire and also Southern Maine. So a lot of my experience is going to be coming from that. There may be times when other states have different practices, so I'll do my best to keep this in general terms that we can use regardless of what state you're doing business in. You know, the contract to close is great because when you've worked with the sellers, you've helped them prep the house, you've helped them list the house, you've helped market the house, shown the house, you've received offers, you've negotiated offers for your sellers. And it's in this crazy market, that's a lot of work. You might have received a lot of offers before you get to being under contract. If you've worked with the buyer, you have probably written a lot of offers before you've been able to get them under contract. And you know, you've worked with their lender, which you're going to continue to do through the rest of this process. Um, you've negotiated, you've gotten them under agreement. And from the client's perspective, they're probably a little exhausted by the time we get to contract to close. And they have they are going to have a lot of questions. And it's really our job to now hold this all together. There's a lot of dates, there's a lot of details, things that you may have consulted and prepped them for at the beginning of this process. They're not going to remember everything. They're not going to remember the order of things. Remembering your dates and not letting them miss a deadline is your job, and you cannot screw that part up. So there's a lot of tools for that. You have Command. I also keep. I'm a spreadsheet gal. I love Excel, so I keep a pendings spreadsheet as well. So I have all my dates lined up there for all my under contracts, so that I look at it. It's one of the first things I open every single day. So I'm constantly looking at all of my under contracts, because once you get rolling, you're going to have multiple people under contract at the same time, and they're all going to be in different spots along that timeline. There's also a lot of other people that are involved. So we're going to talk about that today too, your lenders and your title companies, inspectors and folks like that along the way. So you're building a strategic team to get your buyer or seller through this process. And the key to doing it all successfully is communication and relationships. So it's relationships with all of those vendors that we're going to talk about, and it's the relationship that you're in with your client. If you haven't taken Monica Reynolds' successful assistant, or she has an assistant uh, MAPS coaching class that you can take. I took that when I first got my license, and it's a wonderful class. And I'll never forget, she talked about contract to close as being the dessert. And that really resonated with me, because it is the dessert. It's the dessert for your client. If you look at it this way, say you go out for dinner, you have a really big occasion to celebrate. You pick the fanciest restaurant in your town to go to. You get all dressed up. You drive there. The service is impeccable. You order a beautiful, have a great cocktail. You order a beautiful meal. The waiter is just giving you tons of attention. The food is to die for delicious. Your company that you're with is fun. You're having a great time. And then they wheel out the dessert. And they have beautiful display on the dessert cart. And you pick your most favorite dessert. They bring your dessert out and they put it on the table, and there's a fly on the plate. That is contract to close. If you mess any of that up, it doesn't matter how great you were when you were doing their presentation and getting them signing agency and showing them houses and negotiating contracts, and you've worked your butt off, but the fly on the plate just kind of ruins the whole experience. So when you go out the next day to work and someone says, "How was your dinner?" "It was great, but when I got my dessert, there was a fly on the plate." Contract to close, if something goes wrong at contract to close, it's the same thing. When they are going out with their friends and they say, "Oh, you just bought a house or you just sold your house. How was your experience?" "Well, it was really great, but contract to close was bumpy." That's what they're going to remember. So don't let there be a fly on the plate when you're doing contract to close, for a lot of reasons. You have a high level of standard, right? We want to be the best person in the business. We want to be professionals. We've taken a lot of care. And we also want referrals from these people. A huge portion of my business comes from repeat clients and referrals. So having just a solid contract to close process helps with getting referrals and getting repeat business from your folks. So we're going to talk about how to make that like just a stunning, stellar experience today. And so today's agenda, we are going to build our buyer and seller timelines, because contract to close is all about dates and keeping everybody on track. We're going to talk about best practices for managing the deal. I like to be the driver of the bus here, and that means I like to be in control of both sides of the deal. I'm keeping track of my client's perspective, and I'm also keeping track of the other person's, the co-broke and their client's perspective. Um, hold on one second. It's okay. So we're also going to talk about command and transaction management. We're going to talk about your success list and daily habits. So first things first, let's build a buyer timeline. You know, from the buyer's perspective, they're super excited. You need to really keep them on track here. You start with having an executed contract, right? So you get everyone's signatures, you've negotiated, you've gone back and forth. The contract may have been rewritten, or there might be strike throughs and initials, but we get to the point where everything's signed and initialed and the contract has been delivered back to both parties and you're under contract. They are not going to, the buyer isn't going to necessarily know what to do next, so that you're going to have to keep them on track with that. And that starts with working with the lender. I really like to coach my buyer clients here that, you know, the lender is now going to be asking for a lot of documentation. It's going to be bank statements and W-2s and tax returns and, you know, verifications of all kinds of things. It could be letters to explain credit issues. It could be child support paperwork. Whatever it is, when they ask for it, they need it right away. So I really want to coach my buyers on that. I want them to understand that if the lender gives you a list of documents, which the first communication with them is going to be a pretty good sized list of documents that they're going to need, that they need to get them all in a timely manner. Typically, the lender, you know, if they're handing them in, which the buyer might be handing them in like one document at a time, they're going to stack those documents up until they're all in. They're not going to get one document, review it, and wait for the next one, and then review that one. They're going to get that stack, and then they're going to start processing. So it's important for your buyer to understand that, because when they're delaying and getting paperwork, then they're going to end up delaying on the back end on your closing date. So they need to understand that how important that paperwork is. So that's the first piece in the timeline with it. We got to get their lending going, and we need to really fast track that, because things are taking a long time and on the lending side. One thing I didn't mention is, please interrupt me, folks. I love participation. I love to see video cameras turned on so I can see your faces. If you have a question or a comment or something to add, just unmute yourself and jump right in. In working with the lender, it's also important that, you know, you're staying in touch with them. I'm calling my lenders every week. I'm calling them to find out how is my buyer behaving for you? Are they getting you everything? Do you need me to jump in here and help you with anything? And when is that file complete and getting over to underwriting? Things are taking a long time on the lender side. They're still super heavy in refinancing some of their clients. We're all using the same underwriters. So the same underwriters are looking at new purchase deals for the lender and refis for the lender. We're all using the same appraisers. So those appraisers are really busy. There's also less appraisers right now. Some appraisers are not doing much work with their lender because they don't want to necessarily go into houses because of COVID. So we need to help our lender out with making sure our buyers are behaving. Um, the next piece of that on the timeline is going to be a home inspection, a home inspector. So we want to, make sure that we're within our deadlines. Every state is a little bit different on how the contract reads on this. Some states, like New Hampshire, you have a certain amount of time to do your inspection and have your buyer's first response. But Maine, that deadline is we've had our inspection, we've responded, and we've negotiated, and we're done. We're moving past that contingency. So make sure you know what the rules and regulations are around the home inspection for your state. If you're not sure on that, please go to your coaches or your leadership, your sponsor, or a mentor, or whoever you go to for contracts, to make sure that you're understanding that. And we also want to make sure that our buyers are aware that that's the next step. They don't put in here, I feel like on the buyer timeline, we're missing a spot, kind of like right about here, for title. Your title company, if you're in a state that is a title company, a title state, I know Mass, you're an attorney state, so title, attorney kind of are interchangeable in this example. We are engaging in those folks at this point, typically after we're done the home inspection process. I know for me, I'd like to direct my lender to hold off on ordering appraisal till we're past home inspection. I don't want my buyers paying for anything if this deal is not going to happen. And for me, the biggest contingency in a contract is the home inspection contingency. So I like to get past that before I have my lender pull the trigger on ordering the title, or if you're in an attorney state, engaging the attorney, um, and ordering the appraisal. Does anyone have any questions so far on this building a buyer timeline?
Susan, I have a question.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Great,
Um,
thanks.
Good. I'm in Boston Metro, and I was just wondering, would this work the same as for condominiums as well? Is there any extra things that you need to do for a condo?
Absolutely. Fantastic question. And so for condos, especially from a lender perspective, um, you need all the condominium docs. So a strong listing agent will have had all of that for you prior to you even viewing the property. They're going to need they're going to need the rules and regulations. They're going to need the association documents. They're going to need the meeting minutes. They're going to need the budget. So with a buyer that is purchasing a condo, there's also parameters around what type of financing that will be allowed for that association. If there's a high number of renters in a condo association, the lender might not be able to approve that for an FHA loan. There's approvals for FHAs, condo associations, to be approved by FHA and by VA. You can, to find out if an association is approved for VA, you can go to the VA website, and there is a few different buttons that you have to click. And if anyone needs that, please reach out to me offline. I have all of that saved. You can also look up if a condo association has been approved for FHA. Now, if it hasn't been approved, that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be approved. I think it was maybe around 2011, some years back, they removed all, they expired every association's FHA status, and they turned it into a 2-year expiration on them. And the reason that they did that is an association can get approved for an FHA loan, and the lender typically is the one that gets that approved. But they were getting approved, and they were approving them based on the health of the association. They want to make sure for an FHA buyer that the association is maintaining its properties, there's not a high number of rentals in there, that they're getting into a safe financial spot. But they weren't expiring them. So some associations were very healthy. And then as time went on, they became unhealthy. So they now have a 2-year expiration on them, that after 2 years it expires, and then they have to reapply for that status. So I have, if you need that, find me on Facebook, Facebook message me, Susan Kenyon, or you can reach me at thekenyonteam@gmail.com, and I'm happy to help. I'm also on the Ignite Facebook group, so you can reach out, you can find me there.
Susan, what's a typical cost for an appraisal?
So that really can vary. In my market, I'm seeing about it's typically $500. Now, if if you were here for me when I was talking about um, a couple of days ago on negotiating the deal, and when I talk about buyers and the importance of using a local lender, I know their prices, so I'm able to guide my buyer. But as much as I want everyone to use a local lender, every once in a while I have a buyer that refuses to take my advice. And so this past year I had a buyer that did not use a local lender. They insisted on using, um, I don't even remember the lender's name. They were out west somewhere. The appraisal was $700. So it can vary. I tell my folks when I have a net sheet for my buyers and for my sellers. And so I'm preparing buyers before we even go shopping of what their expenses are. I let them know, if you're using my local lender, you're looking at $500, but it can vary. It can go up, I've seen it go up to 700.
Is that something that the buyer is ordinarily stroking a check for, or is that wash out at closing?
Yeah, so typically the appraisal is paid for when you order it. So on this timeline here, where I'm working with the lender, I have a pretty hefty contract to close process. My process starts with um, tons of communication. As soon as we're under contract, I have a bunch of canned emails that go out, and then I just modify them to be specific to the contract. One of them is to the lender, and the one that goes to my lender, I direct them. I send them a copy of the contract. I send them copies of any pertinent information. My lender likes to see the MLS listing, so I send her that. I do not send home inspections to lenders. Please don't do that. Um, they, they only need to see what they need to see, and home inspections to lenders can go sideways really fast. But I also, in that canned email, I ask them not to order the appraisal until I let them know that we're past home inspection, because I don't want them to pay for it if we're going to not move forward. I also don't want to give away that leverage. So when I have my seller hat on and I'm representing the seller, if I know that that buyer has already, they could be into home inspections for $1,000 or more, and they've paid at least $500 for an appraisal, and now we're going to negotiate on things that they might have found in the home inspection. I know that they could be into that for $1,500. The leverage, they've now given me away some leverage, because the more money that buyer has into it, the less likely they're going to want to walk away. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I also I like to direct who the title's going to go to, the title order to. I told you guys I'm kind of a control freak. So I let my lender know who I would like the title order to go to. And I usually, I have a couple of different title companies that I really like. And the more I build a strategic team for my buyer. And it works because they know my expectations. I have very high standards and they can meet them. Um, I communicate a lot with my lender and my title folks so that they know what my expectations are and I know what theirs are. I know what they're going to need from me to help us all make this the dessert for my buyer so that they can help me make this the most awesome experience for my buyer. And that's my goal, is to give my buyer the best possible experience during this contract to close process. So your title company is important. So we get past home inspection. We're ordering appraisal. Now I like to get through home inspections as quickly as possible, whether I have the buyer or the seller in a contract, because it's stressful. And we've talked about this. We negotiate a contract 2 times. We negotiate a contract when we go under agreement, and then we negotiate a contract at home inspection. I want this to be as smooth a process as possible. So with the home inspection, I also have home inspectors that I recommend. And I've really shopped my home inspectors. I like my home inspection to be about significant, for starters, your buyer should attend the home inspection. I do sometimes have a buyer that's like, nah, just you go and I'll get the report. I like a buyer to go to the home inspection. The home inspection for me, and I explain this to my buyer, it's really for a couple of different reasons. If I want you to learn about your home, the home inspector will walk you through your new home. They're going to teach you about the systems that are running and being used in the house. They're going to teach you about how to maintain your house. They might give you some, projections for into the future of what you might want to be doing for repairs, maintenance, upgrades, renovations. They're just in general a great source of information for your buyer. You need to go to the home inspection. Don't skip the home inspection. It's really, really important for you to hear what they are hearing. It's really important if they're like measuring rooms that you're hearing what the inspector says, that if they say something that might require additional questions, that you're there to ask them. Um, I'm a fan of home inspectors that are not alarmists. Unless you're purchasing a brand new construction home, there will be issues with with the house, and that is okay. I coach my buyers before we get to the home inspection that the home inspection is for you to learn about your home, and it's also for significant issues and defects that were not previously disclosed that we might then be able to negotiate on. It's not for us to create a honeydew list and then ask the seller to fix all that stuff. It's not going to happen. Um, we are, I find that contracts work best when we have an attitude of win win. I like my buyers to understand at this, especially at this point, how much stress the seller is under. Yes, I represent you as the buyer. You are my priority. But part of my responsibility is for you to have a big picture as to what is happening here. The best, the I'm all about relationships. Our motto that I have printed right on my door to my office is relationships, service, results. And I do my business in that order. I do every step of my business in that order. If you have a strong relationship, then you'll deliver great results. And that means a great relationship with everybody within this transaction, a great relationship with your co-broke. And I'm reaching across the aisle here and making relationships with that seller. I want them to like me and I want them to like my buyer because we're going to need some stuff from them as we go through this process. And if we're all playing nice in the sandbox from the beginning, my buyer will have a stronger chance of being able to get some things they're going to ask for as we move through the contract. And it may look like I need an extension on something. If I've been contentious at the home inspection process and I have nitpicked things, when I need an extension on something, they're going to be less likely to give it to me. Here's another thing that happens at the home inspection process. Emotions are, they're way up here for the buyer and for the seller. If your buyer is going to come in at the home inspection and ask for things that that might be kind of ridiculous to ask for, the seller, we're in a seller's market right now. They don't have to agree to what you're going to ask, what you're going to negotiate for them to do. I just had a seller say, cancel my contract, because the buyer came back and asked for a ridiculous ask from the home inspection. And my seller said, I'm done. I'm not doing a single thing, and we can cancel the contract and go back on the market. And sellers do that. They do things out of principle. So if we're doing a good job for our buyer, we're warning them of those potential pitfalls during this process. So the home inspection, I know I'm spending a lot of time on that, but this is where contracts can fall apart. And we didn't go through all of this work to get here to have a contract fall apart. It's our job to keep it together. Someone
Susan, I
ask a
have a
question so I can
question.
have a sip of coffee.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So it sounds like from what you're saying about the home inspection, which all makes a ton of sense, that I see already pre-inspected homes, like when they go on the market,
Yeah.
they've done an inspection. So what do you think of those, of doing that?
You know what? I think that John and I were some of the first agents up here to do pre-inspections.
Oh,
We've been doing
okay.
them for years. And thank you. I almost feel like I put a mole in the audience here to ask me that question, to make that comment. I'm a huge fan of pre-inspections for a lot of reasons. We're using, we all use the same inspectors by and large. I mean, once in a while, I'll have some like weird inspector come through with when I'm representing the seller, and I'm like, who the heck is that? But for most of the times, we're running into the same inspectors. So if you're using a very reputable home inspector for a pre-inspection, chances are when you go under contract with a buyer's agent, they're going to have recognized that name and be happy with it. The way that I use my home inspection is it's presented to the buyer. It's all public. It goes right on my MLS. I have the buyer sees it before they even get to the property. Most of the time, unless there's stuff in there I want to explain to them in person at a showing. And when we're negotiating, when I have had a pre-inspection, I write in a contingency in there to make it super clear that the buyer has received and reviewed the home inspection prior to submitting the offer as full disclosure. I'm also communicating with that co-broke saying, there's a home inspection. It was done by X home inspector, and it's there for full disclosure. It's there as part of the disclosure. The expectation is that your buyer's looking at it, and the purpose of that is that they can't come back and ask me for something that they find if they do another home inspection, they can't ask me for something that's in my home inspection. Their home inspector has to find something new.
Susan,
Yeah.
hi, may I interrupt?
Please do.
This seems like a real good idea. I'm just a little bit confused. When you have a pre-inspection, are you having your buyer have it or your seller have it? Did you hear me? I'm sorry. You're muted.
I lost-
Susan, I'm sorry.
Here we go.
Okay,
I lost my
great, yeah.
cursor to unmute myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
No, the seller, I have my seller do that, and
Okay,
they pay for it. I have them
okay,
pay
so when
for
you're
it.
representing the seller, excuse me, have
Yeah.
your seller, yes, oh, okay. And you
Yeah.
put that in, do you put that in kind of with your whole package or?
Oh yeah, I put it right online.
Oh, really?
I put it right online. I do. I want that buyer to see it.
Ah,
I want them to read through it, not just for the full disclosure piece of it, but I'll tell you what, when you have when that home is pre-inspected and the buyer's gone through it, it takes so much stress off the table for both
Oh,
parties, because I want that buyer, whoever it's going to be,
yeah,
I don't want them to feel like my seller is hiding anything.
I see.
There's a lot of emotions, right? Like
Yeah,
buyers might be like, "Oh, well, what are they hiding? You know, they must be hiding something."
I
I want to
see.
have an open book. I want them to know about the property they're putting an offer on. If they
Wow.
have questions on something,
Mm-hmm.
I would rather them ask me before they submit an offer.
Oh, interesting. So do you like include that kind of in the package that, has the property disclosure and all of that? I mean, it's literally with the listing at the beginning, or do you just
Literally. It's
really?
literally, it's right there. I
No
I
kidding.
yeah. And I mean, if someone can't get to those documents and they're setting up a showing, I email it to them. I want
Really?
the buyer to see it.
What,
Oh,
I'm
what's really
creating an
nice
open
about
book.
that is you're protecting the seller. The seller basically is saying, we're not talking, don't even come talk to me. Let's not
Yeah.
waste time. It's actually
interesting.
quite brilliant. It doesn't cost the seller very much to not have hassle.
Well, and a couple things. When the seller, I know we're totally going off track here, and I'm
That's
okay with that if you guys
Thank
are.
you. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
It also gives the seller an opportunity to maybe make some repairs that I'll tell you what, if I had a home inspector go through my house, I'd probably be shocked with what they find.
Yeah.
We don't see those things in our home.
Yeah.
So they might be uncovering some things that my seller's going to want to do prior to showings. And so then I can
Interesting.
make a list of what my seller has done since the home inspection.
Mm-hmm.
I have, and I can make some suggestions to my seller, like,
Mhm.
okay, these are, here's a couple of electricians, call them, and these are the things that we're going to want to take care of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've got a question, Susan, about
Yeah.
that. Have you ever gotten into trouble with the lender looking at the listing and because you were saying never
I
send
remove it.
you.
Take
Okay.
it as soon as we go under contract, I take that stuff down.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't want the appraiser seeing it, and I don't want the lender seeing it.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Okay. Because oftentimes well, not that I've ever closed a thing, but they'll ask for the listing that we're looking at a house on. And I wouldn't want to just send the listing over with that right in it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
And
I
I did
do.
have another question about inspections on new construction, but we kind of got off that topic.
Oh, bring it back. That's okay. Go ahead.
So new construction inspections, tell me about that, because I've got one under agreement and we're going to PNS mid-February, but there's nothing built and it won't be done until late July or August. So there's nothing to inspect until late July, mid-July.
Yeah.
What do you
So
do there?
there's a couple of schools of thought on inspections for new construction. I think they're a great idea. I haven't done a lot of inspections on new construction.
Right.
A lot of builders for new construction will insist that you use their purchase and sales agreement.
Yeah.
And some of them don't allow you to do that.
Yeah.
So if you're in that scenario and you're not using your typical purchase and sales agreement because
Correct.
they're insisting,
Yeah.
make sure you read through that with a fine tooth comb,
Okay.
because they throw things in there like you can't do a home inspection.
Mhm.
You have to use this title company. Deposits are non-refundable, regardless of contingency.
Yeah.
Some builders say, I need this much of the deposit partway through.
Mhm.
It's kind of buffering some of their costs. I
Mhm.
mean, you can see a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah. Okay.
You are having to have the city inspect new construction. The builder has to have the city do a lot of inspections. They're
Okay.
having an electrical inspector out there. They're having a building inspector out there. All of that stuff is getting signed off on, and a certificate of occupancy is issued
Okay.
prior to closing. So there is a level of inspections that's happening.
And I can request those, get those, look at them.
Yeah, your lender will not close
Okay.
on a new construction without a CO,
Yeah.
a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
CO will not be issued unless all of the inspections have been signed off on.
Okay. All right.
So, Susan,
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
I,
Hi, I'm Joyce from,
Hi.
how are you, Susan?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. I have one question about the pre-inspection. Now, when the seller has the pre-inspection, would I still, require my, buyers to get an inspection also?
Fantastic question. We kind of skipped right over that. Um, you know, n- so if I have the seller, we do a lot. I would say at least 85% of our listings have a pre-inspection.
Really?
Yeah. And it's all in how you sell it to the seller, right? We're salespeople. We are selling all of the time.
Oh.
And a huge percentage of those properties, when they go under contract, the buyer does not do another home inspection. On the flip side, when I have the buyer, if I know the home inspector and we go through that home inspection with the buyer page by page, I am comfortable with them not doing a home inspection. Sometimes you might also see that the buyer might have the option to go to that home inspector and for a reduced fee, have them just go through. They've already inspected it once, so they don't need to be there for as long of a time. Can you walk through the house with me with the inspection report? And so I've had them charge like $150 for that versus the full charge for the home inspection. So a few different things can happen, but now the buyer still has the opportunity to do their own home inspection, but they've signed off on that they've already been disclosed of mine. So either way, I'm happy.
Susan, may I just ask again, I'm kind of belaboring this. When you said, I think you said about 85% of your sellers, you have them have the pre-home inspection. Do you have kind of a bar, like for instance, if it's a house where you anticipate that a lot of issues might come up? And the other thing I'm thinking too, I had an interesting experience. It was about a year ago, and my buyers were going to go to a home that we knew would sell quickly in this area. And the list agent there said to me, she said, they're welcome to have the house inspected before they come to see it. She said, I don't want to know the results, but they're welcome to do that. Because I think what I've always thought is that when a home is inspected, as the list agent, I don't want to know what the issues are because then I have to disclose it. And I'm in Massachusetts, so just thoughts on that. And again, I don't mean to belabor it. This is so interesting, so helpful. Yeah.
I'm a fan of disclosing everything. I'm happy to know about it. What I don't want is for that property to close and then a year goes by and something goes wrong. I'm getting a phone call. Why didn't I disclose this? I find that deals for me and the way that I do my business, the more everybody knows, the better. Even when I represent the seller, I want that buyer to love that home.
Good.
I want
Great.
them to be so happy that they're in there. I don't want them to have any questions, and I don't want to put my seller in a liable position that they didn't disclose something they should have disclosed because, in New Hampshire, the property disclosure lives past the closing. The seller,
excuse me, the property disclosure.
And I don't know Massachusetts real estate law, but in New Hampshire, the property disclosure lives past the closing.
Oh, okay.
So that seller, if they didn't disclose something that they should have, or if they lied on a disclosure, they're responsible for that after closing.
Okay. Yep.
And there's timelines around how long and all that stuff. And I don't want to get too deep into a New Hampshire contracts class.
Yes.
I do love talking about that stuff. So if you have a question in New Hampshire or Maine, call me and I'm happy to help you.
Okay.
But I can't speak to Massachusetts or the other states.
Yeah, and to that point, Susan, I just want to, Sue Doyle is actually reminding us of some stuff in the chat. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear because this is a regional class. You're going to want to check with your broker around some of this guidance, right? So if you're required to attend, being at an inspection. I don't know if there are different rules in different states around that. And also, anything that we post to a listing, there's going to be rules around that as well. So for us in New Hampshire, if we're going to post a pre-sale inspection, we have to have permission from our seller to do that, right? To share that document because it's their information. So you want to make sure you know the rules in your area and your state. So that's just our disclosure to make sure
Great.
that we're not giving you information because this may not apply word for word to your state. Okay. So just keep that in mind. But
Great.
yeah, pre-sale inspection, and certainly something to ask your TLs about and other agents in your market center. Have they had success and how are they using them? So thank you, Susan.
Yeah,
Great.
no
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
One, one more quick question on that before
Yeah,
before
sure.
we get going.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matt from Keller Williams North Central.
Nice to see you.
You as well. So you said that a lot of your listings, you said about 85% of them, you get the pre-home inspection. Do you find that a lot of buyers opt out of getting a second inspection from that?
I do.
And so does that void that contingency for them to be able to back out after an inspection?
It depends on what you've written into your contract.
Yeah.
So
but yeah.
I have, if in those scenarios, if they have that contingency written in there and it's agreed upon between the buyer and the seller, and this is where you're going to want to check with your state. In my state, if it's built in there as a contingency, they can get out of it for that contingency. The purpose, one of the strategic uses of the pre-home inspection is it can remove that contingency if I'm negotiating that way, or it may just shorten that time period. So my goal with when I'm wanting to go under contract here is I want to get past that contingency as quickly as possible. I also, like, from the buyer side, if there is a home inspection and they don't have to, they might, and they're not doing their own, that's also removing a big expense for them. But you're also, for me, I'm also always offering for my buyer. If I have the buyer in that scenario, I'm always offering for them to do a home inspection. It's their call. You never want to say, oh, you don't do a home inspection. It's always their decision.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Susan, I have a question.
Yeah.
I recently had a family member who bought a prefab home. They had to have an additional inspection done by a structural engineer. Do you know if it's common practice? Because it was an additional $600 that they were kind of surprised with.
Yeah, I have not had that experience, so I really can't speak to it. The one thing I would say is, when you're doing, like, if you're doing a new construction, if you're doing a prefab, it's typically a lot of paperwork that you have to also have your folks sign off on. And if that's the scenario, you got to really read through all of that with a fine-tooth comb. Even with a condo, a lot of times there's a fee for a new owner in an association. It's buried in the documents. So you have to kind of just go through that documentation. Or if you're in that scenario, go to your market center's Facebook page, if it's an active Facebook page, and ask who has had that experience. I can't speak to that. Anyone here able to?
I can tell you, I don't know if you can hear me, this is Michelle from Keller Williams in Salem. I actually used to work for a property management company before coming over to Keller Williams, and I was on the receiving end of those kind of things. So a lot of times what I would do is on my 6Ds is I would put if there was that situation where the buyer was required to pay, say 2 months condo fees as reserves upon transfer of sale, that goes into the 6D document that the title company is supposed to be requesting. It just depends. Usually it gets in there so that they can see it. But the problem is not everybody reviews everything on that disclosure. And a lot of times I found that if an attorney was doing the closing, a lot of times they just wouldn't even order the 6D. They would just move right along and assume that everybody paid, and then they wouldn't know that there was a buyer, that there was a fee that the buyer needed to pay upon transfer.
And you know, this is the dessert that we want to be so awesome, right? So we need to be going through those documents for our buyer prior to them going under agreement or and writing offers. We don't want them to find out when the closing, right before the closing, that there's a $600 fee that's added on to their closing costs that they didn't know about. So going through that documentation, that's our job. It's our job. Home insurance is on this timeline, and you know, buyers, for some reason, the insurance binder is like the last thing they do. But we really want to be talking to our buyers about contacting and reaching out to their home insurance provider right from the beginning to get that binder going. We want them to, the home insurance contact, to be running their reports. It's called the Clue report, that they actually run a report on insurance claims that have been run on that property. We need to know if it's in a flood zone. There's things that can come up. So the home insurance piece seems to often get pushed to the very end of the deal. It's better service to our buyer when we are coaching them on getting that done as soon as we go under contract. Lenders are typically going to they're going to require a home insurance binder from the for the loan, and that's going to look like, you know, they pay typically the full year in advance, a 1 year in advance for their home insurance. Their lender should have been communicating with them about that when they were getting pre-approved and going through the application process. And it's good to, you know, have a home insurance contact that you work with regularly, because if you have an inclination that a home might be in a flood zone, you can call and find that out ahead of time, because that really is going to impact their, possibly their ability to even purchase the home, because it increases their premium so much. And then there's home warranty on this timeline. I don't see a lot of home warranties right now. We're in such a seller's market. I was seeing a lot of home warranties when we were in a buyer's market, but this is on the timeline. You can get a home warranty on a property. Sometimes it's used as a negotiating tool. Having you know, a seller purchase a home warranty on behalf of the buyer, for the buyer, that may be something that you see in the future, and that typically is handled right at in this contract to close process. Prior to closing, it can get put right on the on that closing disclosure, that final documentation, and paid for at closing.
Excuse
Hi.
me, Susan, if I can interrupt again. So you mentioned coaching them as far as home insurance, and I'm not seeing it on this timeline in front of me, but you
Oh.
want us to just write it in?
Oh, I guess my printout here is probably from a previous version, and
Oh.
it does have home warranty.
Yeah, it
Oh,
doesn't have
yeah.
home warranty either.
It
Yeah.
has it like, mine had it like right here in
Oh,
this
okay.
this spot.
So
You
we
could
put
write it in if you're going to be referring
Sure.
back to this when it's like a buyer's market. I'm not really seeing home warranties that much, but if you are going to do a home warranty,
Yeah.
that's about where you would do it.
Okay, so between the appraisal and the close?
Yeah. You
Okay.
engage in with the home warranty company, you get the appropriate information that they need, and you connect them with the closing person, whether it's an attorney or a title company, and they can
Okay.
get that put right on the closing documents.
Okay, and then as far as coaching them, as far as getting home insurance, would that be prior to appraisal, or when would we do that? That's not on the
Yeah,
timeline either.
they're not, oh gosh, it isn't, is it? I'm
No.
looking at my paper here that I had printed, and it's,
Sue, did you jump slides? This was on the all on the buyer timeline. And this is
Yeah.
the seller timeline. So I don't know if it's supposed to, if you're working off of one and not the other.
No, I'm on a build a buyer timeline.
Oh, because this
Yeah,
is
so this
saying
one says
seller.
build a seller. So if you go
Okay,
back,
I jumped slides. There
Oh,
we
okay,
go.
great. Okay,
It's
we're all
there.
set.
Thank you for keeping me on track, guys. I am like such a squirrel sometimes. I coach them. I like them to reach out to the insurance person right when we go under contract. They don't have to pay for that they pay for their insurance binder at the closing table.
Mhm.
So there's no cost associated to that, to them for that. So I like them to, I like them to just get that going right away.
Okay. Great.
Cool. And then we have the closing, which is such an exciting day, right? We get to the closing table. Right before closing, those final closing documents should be going out to your buyer. There's a lot of information on a closing disclosure or an ALTA statement. If my buyer has questions on a number on there, I direct them back to the title company or the closing attorney. We're realtors, we're not attorneys. If they have questions on, maybe how the taxes were prorated or the final water or sewer bill or state taxes, stuff like that, I want them to, and I can call them the title company with them. I can put them in contact and not be part of that. I do direct those questions right back to them. I do ask them prior to that closing day, do you have any questions on that? Are you satisfied? Are these the numbers that you were expecting to see? Because I want them to feel like I'm holding their hand throughout the whole process.
Susan, I have a question.
Yeah.
Going back a little ways earlier, you said let Linda know who title company's going to. And is that, can you explain that to me? Let the Linda know who title company going to?
Yeah, so I'm in New Hampshire and Maine, we use title companies. And I have specific title companies that I like my lender to use. The lender orders title. They order title and they order appraisal. So they're the ones that actually send the file to a title company. But I like them to use specific title companies that I engage in business with. I do that for a couple of reasons. I know how they work. I'm used to their level. Their standards are in line with my standards. I'm happy with the work that they produce. Those title companies also support me outside of specific transactions, like they get me deeds. They let me ask them legal questions on properties that I'm not under contract for. So yeah, that I work with my lenders on, building a strategic team of people for my buyers.
In Massachusetts, it's not a title company. I mean, the
No,
title.
your
state.
attorney.
Okay, we're
So yeah, I do not practice in Massachusetts. I'm not familiar with mass real estate law. So really use your leadership or your coaches when you have questions on that stuff, because it may differ.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you want to be, regardless of who was ordering that title or who you're using, I like to be in contact with them. I like to talk to them, and it's not always just written communication. I like talking to people, like answering questions, letting them, making sure that my buyer knows that I'm keeping this contract moving along this timeline with their best interests in mind. Okay. Any questions on buyer timeline? We're going to move over to the shorter one here, the seller timeline. So we have the, offer's been accepted, we're under contract, and now we need to prepare the seller for the inspection process. It's important that your seller is prepared that there's going to most likely be an inspection. And we also need them to have the home ready for that. The home inspector needs to have access to all of the systems. So if the property has a lot of stuff in the basement, they need to be able to get to the systems. They need to be able to get to the furnace. They need to be able to see all four walls. They need to have access to the attic. They need to have, if it's just a scuttle hole, sometimes it's just a scuttle hole that's accessed through a closet that has clothes hanging in it. I don't want to touch their stuff. The home inspector doesn't want to touch the seller's stuff. So I have my sellers get that property ready for the inspection. And if it's a scuttle hole, they need to have that closet empty and accessible for an inspector to get up there into that scuttle hole. I want them to be prepared that it's going to be a couple hours. It could be 2 hours. It could be 3 hours. I unfortunately have had an inspection go 4 hours. But the buyer, if it's in the contract that they're doing an inspection, they have that right to be in there for the home inspection. If you're representing the seller, please attend the inspection. Be there for that. Your seller, this is a very emotional time. This is a very stressful piece of the contract. We want to remove that. If there are significant things that are coming up at the inspection, we need to prepare our seller for that, because they're going to ask, how'd the home inspection go? If you haven't been there, you can't tell them. They don't want to wait for the response to come in from the buyer and they're like, what do you mean there's knob and tube wiring? How come you didn't tell me? You know, you need to be there and kind of prepare them. And remember, communication throughout this whole process is super important. So you need to be at the inspection,
So,
in my
excuse me,
opinion.
So
Hi.
Susan, you're saying as the list agent selling the house, I should be at the inspection for at the buyer's inspection?
In my opinion,
Really?
you
Oh, 'cause-
represent the seller. So we're not
Yeah.
there to argue with the home inspector.
Mhm.
We're not there to go, that's not right. Unless so it's kind of like a dance, right? When you go to the home inspection based off of who you represent. I want to be there to also answer questions. Sometimes a home inspector might say, well, this could look like this or it could look like that. I might know that. I might be able to help them with, oh, this is actually how this works. Or I might be able
Really?
to, they might have a question. I might be able to text my seller and answer that. I want to get through
Really?
this inspection with as few issues as possible.
Mhm.
I am representing my seller, so I have to, remember who I'm representing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I attend them. I also like home
Really?
inspections. We're
Yeah.
previewing homes all the time, right? As part of that growing our business.
Mm.
You learn from home inspectors. You
Wow.
learn to look at a furnace, and you should know how to look at that and know if it's a forced hot air system, if it's a forced hot water system, um, if it's on a well
Interesting.
and septic, and you should know how those things run. If you don't know how a private septic system works, start going to some septic inspections and
Interesting.
ask questions.
Yeah, because I think I've been taught never to go to the buyer's inspection.
Can I?
Yeah, I
jump
heard that too,
in?
Mary.
Yes, yes.
Can I jump in on this?
Yes.
Susan, Erin mentioned it a few minutes ago after a chat edition. It's different all over the place, and many brokers have different rules in place. So it's always going to be important to check what your broker is recommending for liability
Mhm.
purposes.
Mhm.
Many brokers in Mass do not want their listing agents at the home inspection. It's how it often works. Many are okay with it, but always check with your broker on these things. As Erin mentioned a few minutes ago, it is a regional class and there are huge differences between different spots. So just before, I don't want anything to go sideways for anybody. Check with your broker. They'll tell you within 3 seconds, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Thank you,
Yeah.
Susan.
Yeah,
Yep,
you
thank
bet. So you do want to prepare your seller for what the inspection is going to look like, and how long it's going to take, and having the house ready, that kind of thing. And then you're going to want to prepare them for the appraisal. The appraisal, appraisals are looking a little bit different right now. I still am a fan of, I love appraiser to actually go in the house. We are seeing with COVID some drive-by appraisals up here. A lot can happen at an appraisal. I typically am meeting the appraiser there as the listing agent. It's typically for me I'm seeing usually about a 15, 20-minute process for them to be at the house. Depending on the lending type, they might be there longer, of conventional versus an FHA or a VA. A VA or an FHA appraiser has to look at more things in the home for an appraisal, so they might be there longer. I'd like to prepare my seller that the appraiser is going to be at the house, but the bulk of the heavy lifting for their job is really done at their desk as they're running comparables. Um, and the reason I tell them that is I don't want a seller to feel like an appraiser went to the house for 20 minutes, put a price on it, and that's all they did. I want them to know that there's a lot of work that actually goes into the appraisal. And then I also want that appraiser to know if they have questions while they're running their comparables, that they can reach out to me. So I want to make sure that they have that comfort level that, if you're running into any problems comping this out, please call me. And that can be an issue right now, right? Because it's such a seller's market. Properties are going under contract over asking price very frequently in my market, and maybe yours as well. And then after the appraisal, really the heavy lifting is on the buyer side and with the lender. So the seller, we're reminding them now that let's start packing, let's start getting the house ready. The house has to be, unless it's written in the contract, the house has to be empty. I really like to remind my sellers that if it's in the summertime, please still be mowing the lawn. If it's the wintertime, still be plowing the driveway or snow blowing the driveway. You still need to be maintaining that property. The systems should still be running. And nobody wants your stuff. So, you don't want to get to a final walkthrough and have the seller be like, oh, well, I thought they wanted all that old paint. Typically they don't. I remind them that it has to be empty, and I just had to do that this week with a seller. I went over there. I personally go to see my sellers' properties before closing to see how they're doing with the emptying out piece of it, or at least have that conversation with them, that the house needs. No, people don't want the leftover shingles or the you know maintenance stuff, unless it's been agreed to with the buyer. Have them get rid of it. And that's my advice. That's what I do.
Susan.
Hi.
Hi, it's Erin.
Hi.
Rhonda has her hand up. I don't
Oh,
know
hi.
if you got to it or not, but
Hi, thanks. Hi, I have a question. Given that right now, when we look and we're doing our figuring out costs, that we notice that there's the average square foot for a particular property, but if things are going over ask right now, when the appraisal in this kind of market, are the appraisals coming in over ask, or are they basically coming back to the numbers that are based on average, like for the last 3 to 6 months?
I'm seeing it all across the board. I'm not an appraiser, but they're typically they should be using closed comps. I'm seeing weird, I'm not a fan of this, but I am seeing contracts where buyers are agreeing to pay if they're offering over, they're going under agreement for over asking price. I'm seeing contracts written where the buyer is putting in writing that if the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price, that they'll pay the difference. It's scary what is happening for me, witnessing it. What is happening with purchase prices out there? They're, $25,000, $30,000 over asking. That's a lot.
Right, if that brings up prices of homes, that's gonna eke out people that are who want to buy things that are reasonably priced.
Yeah, it's very challenging to be a buyer's agent right now. It's very challenging to be a buyer. Prices are super high. There's just not a lot in my market. There's not a lot of inventory. We're all going after the same properties. They're losing out on properties. It's a lot. So the more work that you can do up front from a seller or a buyer, the better experience you're going to give both sides.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Susan, I have a question about appraisals also.
Sure. And Sue Doyle, if you're on here, if you have any advice on that too, feel free to jump in. But go ahead.
Is there a nice way, and is it legal to, maybe provide the appraiser with some comps that, would get it closer to the price you're looking for?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a state difference on that question as well, but it's very common for a listing agent. So the appraisal gets ordered from the lender, and then the appraiser will reach out to the listing agent to set up that appraisal. A lot of agents will show up with comps for that appraiser, especially if you're having a hard time, if you're at the really top of your market. I also have sometimes gone with updates to a property. If you're worried about it comping out and there's been a lot of work done to that property, we want to make sure that if there are situations of maybe it's a new furnace, maybe it's a new roof, maybe all the windows have been replaced, maybe this is hardwood flooring, maybe that's radiant floor heating. I want to arm them with as much information that will bump that value up to meet my contract price as possible. And I want to remind them, please call me if you're having a hard time comping that out. Some appraisers will ask you, if I've had multiple offers, and they can see what they typically have a copy of the purchase and sales agreement, and they also have access to the MLS. So they can see if your purchase and sales agreement is over the list price. And they might ask you about that. I had an appraiser the other day ask me, wow, you guys are over asking price. And I was like, you know what? We have tenants in here and we strategically priced that so that we would sell this quickly and not have to be burdening the tenant with a lot of showings. So we did receive multiple offers and they were over asking price.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then we're going to prepare them for closing. So preparing them for closing is, on the buyer side, we're getting the information on utilities that have to be swapped over. On the seller side, we're reminding them to prepare to have their utilities turned off. Especially in the winter time, once we go under contract, if they have oil or propane, you can be reminding them if you're on an automatic delivery, you might want to stop that now so you don't need to be having a full load of oil delivered right before the closing table, if that's appropriate. So you're wanting to prepare them to have all of that stuff taken care of prior to closing. And usually just a week or so before closing is fine for them to call, unless, some people want to do it ahead. If they want to start scheduling that stuff ahead of time, they can. But I do want those systems all to be running in the house. I want, the buyer needs to see that everything is still running and functioning at the time of closing, and prepare them for the closing table. The closing typically up here where I'm at is about 45 minutes long. Right now, I'm preparing them for what is the closing going to look like? Where are we closing right now with COVID? It is colder out. We were doing a lot of curbside closings where people were staying in their cars. That may still be the scenario. So you're going to want to set the table and set the expectation of what it's going to look like. You want to have them bring keys, all the keys, garage door openers, stuff like that is getting sent over to the buyer at the closing. Any questions on that timeline, seller timeline? Or anyone have anything else to add in their experiences?
Yeah, I have an experience to add.
Sure.
And curious as to how other people would have handled it. I just had a closing, and on the walkthrough day, I realized that every single key to the house had been stolen.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I'm curious as to how you would have handled that.
I would have handled that with a sense of humor. And I would have had lock and key companies. I would be Googling to find a close lock and key company and calling them and arranging for them to go over to the house.
Doyle and Kenyon can speak to this better, but up in New Hampshire, we get to the closing table sometimes, and the clients are like, "We don't even have.
We don't have keys.
I got the thing in my car. I pushed the button, the garage door opens. We haven't seen a key in 38 years. Yeah.
Yes.
So another great conversation to have. If you do know of any keys, please bring them with you. God help us. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a nice closing gift. The locksmith is going to come and rekey all your locks for
Yeah.
you.
Well,
The best
that is
one,
what I had done, and it happened to be my mother's house that I sold. And it cost her $1,700.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well,
you need
Yeah.
to find a new locksmith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
right?
was going to
The
say.
best one is for historic properties, and this happens probably 90% of the times. We're talking, 16, 1700s, whatever. At closing, when the seller brings out, I have learned to check long before this at this point, but when they bring out a large Ziploc bag, not a snack size, not a sandwich size, but the like mega Ziploc bag with 7,000 keys in
Yeah.
it, or
Like
like, here you
Schneider from
go.
One Day at a Time. Yeah.
Good luck. Well, it's kind of like my key ring because I keep them all together, but it's really cool when the Ziploc bag gets like hurled onto the table and the buyers are like, what is there any key that you tend to use? They're like,
And
no,
they're not
never
labeled,
have.
right, Sue?
Oh God, no, never. Here's your bag. Good luck.
Oh my gosh.
So ask early on about the key situation. I didn't put it on my list for quite a long time until a few bags of keys were hauled out, and the buyers were actually kind of upset that they, I mean, I thought it was obvious. Some of them were skeleton keys from a long time ago and probably not the accurate one at the moment. But
Right.
yeah, so ask early.
Yeah, if that's going to be a hurdle, that might be a project that you're doing while you're standing at the home inspection for 14 hours, depending on, the size of the property.
Testing keys.
Yeah, that might be a separate date ahead of time, so it can be something that's addressed ahead of time.
Yeah.
not at the
Yeah,
closing
right.
table.
And if none of those work because they have just never locked their house,
Yeah.
not to bring any crime up this way, but it's common. You can then get the locksmith in place and hand off a real modern key at closing without difficulty.
Yeah, that's a great closing gift right there.
There you go.
And you
Have a
know
key.
what? Stuff comes up at closings, and I'm sure Sue has some stories too. But
Ugh.
I think it's important that at the closing table, lots of stuff can come up, and
Mhm.
stay calm and stay positive and be a problem solver, because you're going to close. You just have to sometimes figure things out. But being the person that gets like heightened and upset, that doesn't help anybody. We really just have to handle things with a sense of humor. Get on board with the co-broke. Be a team to solve whatever the problem is that comes up. And people are only a phone call away. So if you have a problem or an issue that comes up at closing and you don't know how to handle it, take a deep breath, go into the other room and make a phone call. Get some help.
Hey, Susan.
Hi.
Hi. Just a little anecdote about the key thing. I've with a lot of my first time home buyers, and they're buying like a house with just 2 doors. My closing gift to them is either a Home Depot gift card and tell them to go buy new locks. So the minute they walk in, they can just replace them. Or I've actually bought them myself and said, here's, new door handles, just go ahead and replace them. So they don't have to worry about the keys. As long as they can get in the house, then they've already switched everything over.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great idea. For sure. Anyone else before we plot documents on your timeline? Okay. So we're gonna Hello. Oh, we're gonna plot communication points first, actually. So we've talked a lot about communication. Communication is so important. The goal here is to be letting your buyer or your seller know what's going to happen before they can ask you the question. If they have to call you with a question, then you might need to put another step into your contract to close process. And setting up these systems, it's a living process. I'm changing mine all of the time, because scenarios, you sometimes weird stuff is still happening that hasn't happened to me before, and we learn as we go. Um, and who do you need to communicate with? You need to communicate with everyone. You need to communicate with the co-broke. If something is happening with the property and you have the listing side, you need to be letting that co-broke know what is happening. We just had a seller who is already moved out and moved to Florida. So it's winter. We're checking on the house all the time. Every few days, one of us goes over and goes into the house to make sure that the heat's working, nothing's happened. Um, and didn't we go over and the heat wasn't working? And we're closing tomorrow. So we solved that problem. Um, we rented heaters. We got the temperature back up. Thank God nothing froze. We had the service person come out. And after it was all resolved, I let the co-broke know that that had happened. It's important to, if big things are happening during the contract to close process on the property, that we're communicating that. It's not good for them to find out on their own, and they will, and it's just not the right thing to do, in my opinion. Have a checklist. So you should have a checklist with a schedule of when you need to talk to people, because you're going to get busy and you think you're going to remember to be checking in with people, and then you get busy and you don't. I'm checking in with the lender every week, whether I have the buyer or the seller. I check in with the lender. How's everything going? If there is if they have a date that they have to hit, if you have a finance commitment date in your contract, you may or may not, depending on what your contracts look like and what state you're in. I'm asking them, how are you looking for hitting that date? How's the buyer doing getting all their documents in? Do we have any issues? Has the appraisal been picked up? Has the appraisal been turned in? So I'm communicating, and I'm putting a checklist on my checklist. I'm putting in when I'm communicating with them. I'm communicating with my buyer or seller every week, so that them setting the expectations of what's going to be happening next, and how are they doing. Just like we're calling people to see how they're doing during COVID, I'm calling them, how are you doing? My sellers, how are you doing with packing? They're stressed out. I want them to know I care. One of the reasons I'm also communicating a lot is because this business is all about relationships. I want this co-broke to want to work with me again. And the better I communicate with them calmly, the more they know I'm a problem solver. Um, the next time I'm submitting an offer on a property they have, I'm going to want them to be like, oh, cool, this is an offer from the Kenyans. It's going to be a good transaction. I'm wanting to communicate with my buyer or my seller, because I'm going to want future business and referrals from them. When they can close and say, you know what, thank you, you kept me informed every step of the way. Or when they're talking about me to their family and friends, I want them to be able to say that my communication was awesome. And communication points, they're verbal, they're emails, they're texts, and they're always professional. I write my emails, sometimes I get emails from co-brokes and everything they want to say is in the subject line. Don't do that. I like my communication in my emails to be very professional. I have a subject, or sometimes I might get an email and there isn't even a subject line. I put a subject line in. Everything is, hello, Katie. I hope this email finds you well. Reaching out to you for whatever reason. And then, thank you, Susan. I'm keeping that standard in my email communications and in my written communication, every email, every written communication, every time, with my co-brokes and with my clients. If I'm sending them documents, I'm asking them to review them. I'm calling them, pick up the phone. I actually am in a contract right now with a co-broke with she's got a signed backup offer in with me. She's never called me. She doesn't call me back. She never viewed the property. When they submitted the offer, not a single call, not a single question about my seller. Pick up the phone. Don't be that agent. Be a communicator. Any questions on plot communication points?
I think there's a fine art in figuring out what is a text, what is an email, and what is a
Yes.
phone call. And there's no way to guide on that, but if it's a major contract issue, make a phone call, follow it up with an email so you have it documented of what you talked about exactly, and they can then write back going, whoa, 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 we didn't agree to that, or whatever. But have it in writing, but also know the proper format for each.
Absolutely. And Sue, thanks for backing up your verbal conversation with
Yes,
a written
please,
email. That
please do.
is super important, because you don't know how distracted the other person is on the
Yep.
other end of the phone, and the written thing is backing up what you said, so we're still all in agreement here, right? Like this, we're validating what our verbal conversation was.
Well, and are
That's
they
a
just
very important point.
agreeing to something to make things okay? And then they go back to their client and the client says, oh, God, no, I'm not doing that. Okay, well, you got to have that in writing because God forbid you get a invitation to the commission or your board or whoever.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to print out every single communication to prove your side.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do not do. And I get it. It's back from legal days. There was always an email that backed up everything.
Yeah.
People in real estate don't tend to do that. And when your entire transaction gets printed out and you're providing every quote unquote, every communication to the commission, when there's something not documented, it really is a negative for you because you can't prove your side, if you will. Hate that term, but
it comes to that sometimes.
It absolutely does. And decisions get made based on lack of evidence a lot of times. But back to the original, I think maybe it's just number of years in or whatever, but there are definitely things that are phone call appropriate. There are things that are text appropriate. Hey, appraisal set for tomorrow at 1. I'll let you know how it goes, or, I'll be there, whatever. Sure, that can be a text. There's not going to be any dispute over that. And just knowing which form to use, I think, is key.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And saving those. So, Sue, what's your practice? Those important emails, I put them right. You can put them in your command, in your opportunity.
Mhm.
There's spaces in your opportunity in command to add documents. If you're using .loop or some other format, you should be saving all of that important communication. So if it is an email, have a PDF of that saved somewhere. What's your process on that?
You've seen my office at some point in life, right?
Yeah.
Former legal background, I have a lot of paper because I'm convinced that bright pink sticky note from 1962 is going to save my butt at some point in the future. So I am getting better at creating, systems of how to keep all that. I also have like 75,000 emails in my system. So I'm not the best one to ask for that.
Well, I guess that the best advice then is to come up with the system.
Yes.
Folks out there, and then just do it. So when you're plotting your communication points and you have that checklist of your process for contract to close, have one of those items on your checklist to file your documentation, wherever you're doing that. If you're an electronic person, where are you putting it so that you can retrieve it when you need it? It's going to happen that you're going to get a phone call and have to pull documents from 2 years ago at some point.
Yep.
That will happen to you. It's really great when you have it. And sometimes it's a customer service thing. You might get a call from a client who closed 4 years ago who says, you know what? I am going to be doing this now. Do you have my home inspection report? Do you have this piece of documentation?
Mhm.
And it's good customer service to say, yep, I have that right here. I'll get it right over to you. They want that from you, and I want to be able to deliver that.
Instantly too.
Yeah.
And if you are called before the commission on something, whether you did something wrong or not, you can still get called up. And pushing a button instead of the stress of I have X number of days to respond, and I'm going to go through, I've got to find all my paperwork and verify that it's complete 100%. If you could push a button and print out everything, or however you choose to do it, far less stress than like, oh my God, I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks searching for stuff.
Yep.
So there's a reason to just put a system in place and keep it all together.
Yeah. If you, I'm just a checklist person. If you have it in a checklist, you're not going to forget to do it.
Right.
And before you know it, it's Friday night. And if your intention was to call all of your clients on Thursdays, and now it's Friday night and your whole week got blown up and you didn't do it, if you had the checklist, it might make that practice better for you.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on plotting communication points?
I do have, this is Rhonda. I have a question about if we put our documents in Command, and let's fast forward for 2 years, perhaps I'm not practicing or I'm with a different brokerage, not likely. But do I need to have a double system that's outside of Command to keep those essential documents?
Yeah, yes, you're not going to have access to Command at that point. I don't keep a separate one because I just have no intent of ever leaving. But that's not to say that that's not a good idea. If that's a concern or whatever, then definitely you can't over keep your stuff.
Is Command completely backed up? If we say that is our record, as long as we are with Command for as long as we're with Keller Williams, is that considered our backup, or do we need a backup of Command?
I put faith that they will have that for you. I don't have any proof of that, but I'm putting faith that KW, your individual brokerage, and Keller Williams International will have that available for you as long as you're there.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Susan.
Hi.
This is Paige from Keller Williams Chestnut Hill. I got a really great piece of advice from the tech person at my market center, and I'm not super tech savvy, so I don't have all the answers, but what he recommended to me, which I think was a great idea, was creating an email alias, as he called it, where everything from your Keller Williams email automatically gets forwarded to this like second alias email, where it's your own private email address. It's not connected to Keller Williams. So if 5 years from now you work for somebody else, let's just say, and somebody reached out to you regarding something and you needed those like email receipts, everything gets automatically forwarded. Every email you send and receive gets forwarded to this email address. That's your own private email, so you can access it anytime. And it's not something that you ever really look at. It just is a second copy of everything. So if you were to change email addresses, move to a different brokerage or something, it's just a copy of everything. So if you needed to search, Susan Kenyon was my client 6 years ago and there's some legal dispute, I could just search Susan Kenyon and everything that you and I ever emailed would come up. So
Sure.
I thought that was a super helpful piece of advice. So I wanted to share. I don't necessarily know how to do that. That's still on my list of things to do. So ask your tech people, but I just thought that was a really, really helpful piece of advice.
Yeah, I think the recommendation, Paige, I think the recommendation is for you to go grab page 2, which is pretty awesome. So write that down. page2@gmail.com and just forward everything from your account to that secondary account, right? Because here's the thing. Sorry about that. In the grand scheme of things, there's a massive server farm in Austin, and that could crash, right? As Kenyon was just saying, though, true, you could have everything in opportunities. That's going to reside with the mothership. Everything that you've closed with your market center needs to be on file too legally. So there's going to be a second layer of protection there. So if you have it in opportunities, Gary has it. If you have closed the file with your market center, your MCA should have their hands on it. And then if you send something to page2@gmail.com, that would be tertiary. And Sue Doyle, in an effort to have less paper in her office, is selling a couple of filing cabinets. So
I actually
might be of
am.
interest to
We've
you.
reduced it. We've reduced it down
Shocking,
a little
Doyle.
bit.
You can see
Just as
Doyle's
a-
suite here in Portsmouth. It's about 30,000 square feet.
and
We're
it's
sticking-
filled with paper, but we're working on it one closing at a time. Just as a reminder though, if, and God forbid, I'm always going to be in commission mode, but if you are asked to produce all of your documents, this second layer counts as well. And not implying that anybody on here would ever try to, push the system and deviate from the rules ever. But if you have set up this two-way email system, it includes that second account as well. So thank you. I'd never heard of anything like that. It makes sense. And now I know I'm going to ask if anybody has a second layered email account and if they have reduced all the documents. So thanks for that, Paige.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that. Well, it makes sense, but I've just never heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a great idea. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Anybody else on communication? Oh, go ahead.
Yes. So what about if you print everything for your client that you're working and then just file and then you have it already there? Is that a
I've
good
seen
way?
agents do that too, and they have boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes.
I'll do a
and
video of my
boxes.
office later on. I'll send it to you guys.
So you
It's
don't
quite fun.
recommend that?
You know what? I think that's a personal preference. I like things to just be electronic and then I shred it because I don't like looking at stacks of paper. It stresses me out to see stacks and stacks of paper like around me. So it is personal preference, but you have to find a system that works for you and just do that consistently, and you'll be okay. If paper makes you happy, then get some boxes and some go to Staples and get some folders. I would say
Well,
just stay
I hope
organized.
I have a lot of paper, so that means that I sell a lot of houses. No?
Yeah. Yeah. I have seen a lot of agents just do the paper, and if it works for you, then it works. As long as you're doing something that works for you, that you're saving your documentation. Because I have had people come back and need documents years later.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Plotting the communication points, it is important to have a system. If it's your Google Calendar that you're setting reminders for, if it's a checklist, if it's some kind of, if you're using smart plans, whatever, if you have a smart plan for a contract to close, that's reminding you of when, have a step in there for when you're communicating and how you're communicating with your folks, would be my advice. And so we're kind of talked about all of this at the same time. Plot documents on your timeline. As soon as since we are talking about the contract to close process, as soon as I go under contract, I am reviewing my stuff all over again. If I'm working with the seller, I'm reviewing my listing docs again to make sure that they're all set. I'm reviewing my under contract documents again to make sure that they're all set. I'm checking that every initial was put in the right spot and that we're not missing any initials, that we're not missing any signatures. If you have to go back and get them, then do that in a timely manner. I'm putting all of that document. So if I am doing a paper folder to start, then I am now putting all of that electronically filed into Command and into an opportunity. If you haven't created the opportunity yet, there's those placeholders there for all of the documents that are required by your market center. And then there is space in there for you to create new placeholders for documents that might not be with a traditional transaction. I put everything in there. I put receipts in there, any sign-offs of the under contract process, like if there was a punch list that had to be done, if there was receipts from stuff that a seller was going to be doing to the property, and then we have to provide that to the buyer. I'm putting all of that in there. I relabel my documents. So I like to have a naming conventions for my documents. I put FE once they're fully executed. That's just my personal thing. Once I put an FE on the end of something, I know I don't have to open it again. Because I'm a control freak, I want to open it every single time I open my opportunity. But that's a kind of a fail safe for me. If I put FE on that, I know I don't have to. And everybody on my team knows not to touch it if I put an FE on it. Because that means Susan's already put her eyeballs on it, leave it alone, and you go do what you're supposed to do next. So I plot documents on my timeline. If you're, when you have your SMART plan for your contract to close process, put times in the tasks in there for you to make sure that you're checking your documents, that you're submitting your documents, and that your documents have been delivered to whoever they have to be delivered to. Your client should be getting copies of all your documents. Anybody have any questions on documents? And I don't want to get into specific documents because we are all in different states. But maintaining and keeping clean files is super important as part of your practice.
Susan, this is a reminder for a bio break.
Okay, awesome. Are we all set with documents, plotting documents on your timeline? Okay.
Yeah, we did have a couple questions in the chat about seller and buyer checklists, and I was just, instead of typing it, I'm just going to say it. You're going to want to check with your market center and command and opportunities, your compliance coordinator or your broker. All of our lists, our seller checklists and buyer checklists might be slightly different depending on our market center, right? And our documents for our state. So you're going to want to check with your local office for that. But they should be in existence somewhere in your market center.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could reach out to your coach or
Your coach, yeah.
team.
Yep.
They can help you with that.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's 10:43. Do we want to do 10 minutes?
Yep. So 10:53, that work for everyone?
All right. See you in 10.
All right. You guys all ready to get started? I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we've plotted our documents on our timeline. Oh, this is such a great section here. Best practices for managing the deal. So a great opportunity here for participation too. Some of my best practices are, you know, I have a process. I have a goal of wanting to have just an amazing experience for contract to close. And I like my paperwork to be really tight. Everything that is important should be in writing. And when you're sending docs to people, a good best practice is to follow up with a phone call or a text. Sometimes they don't get it. Like maybe they're not on email. So I might be sending over a document for signatures. But if that, you know, maybe if I'm sending it to a co-broke, maybe they're on the road all day. They might not see it. I'm not going to assume that they're getting an email if I'm sending something over. I also have so my best practice is to follow that up with a phone call or a text. Get confirmation that they're receiving your documents. If it's a buyer or a seller, that if it's your client that you're working with, get confirmation that they received it and that they understand it. So if you're sending documents, I really want them to review it. And you know, they don't all of the time. And you can tell when you're sending an electronic document and it's like you can see them click, 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 and they're going so fast. I want to make sure that they have reviewed and the important documents. So for contracts and addendums and agency agreements, I'm reviewing those things line by line with them so that they understand what they're signing. They're frequently moving very quickly. They might have like a lot going on in their mind. They might have a very busy household. So I'm asking them if now is a good time to talk about something important. I don't generally leave voicemails for people. That's another best practice. Why? Because people don't always listen to them. And I don't want to leave a voicemail and assume that they've listened to it. And I'm guilty of it. I don't check my voicemails. I think a lot of people don't listen to voicemails. So I don't leave them. If they don't pick up the phone, I will follow it up with a text. Hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? Or an email. And be timely with your communication, with your addendums, with your paperwork. Prepare clients to be timely. It's important for them to understand it's important for them to understand that being timely means that we're going to get to the closing table on time. And I'm using closing because we are talking about contract to close. Documentation really needs to be timely. If you have deadlines, I think a best practice is not jamming up the other side of the deal. If there is a deadline, like that they have to have something and it happens to fall on a Sunday, I'm trying to beat that deadline, so I'm not jamming them up on a Sunday waiting for something, because remember, that's part of my relationship experience I want them to have with me. Other best practices that I wrote down are have the commands checklist as soon as it's executed, get your stuff into command, create that opportunity if it's not created, send it to review, however your particular office is handling that. I don't want to, I have a relationship with those folks too, right? Like my compliance guy, Jason, who I love. I have a relationship with him. So I don't want to jam him up by sending my documents to be reviewed a week before closing. That stinks because now my folks are really busy. Oh, I thought someone was adding something there. I want him to want to look at my file. I want him to have time to look at my file, so I don't want to jam him up. So be timely with your paperwork and be organized. If you're sending your docs into your compliance, however your office is handling that, really late and something's missing, you're not leaving a lot of time to catch up missing documents or missing initials and signatures.
Susan,
Hi.
hi, it's Joyce. Let me cut my camera on so you can see me.
Awesome. Nice to see you, Joyce.
How soon would you say send the paperwork to the compliance? About a week in advance too?
I tell you what, as soon as I go under contract, I'm sending my, I'm personally, that's what's requested of me and my market center. Your market center might have a different way of handling that. I like to submit mine right away for a couple of reasons. I want to know if something's missing as fast as possible. I don't want to jam up my compliance guy, and that's what they're asking me to do. The sooner I can, if I'm checking that off of my list that I've already done that, now I can move on to something else because, you're running your business while you're doing contract to close, but you can't forget about growing your business. So be efficient with your paperwork so that you can get back to lead generating. Dealing with business never takes the place of finding business. So the tighter your process is here, the checklist should help you with making these tasks, whether it's communication or documents or reviewing files. The checklists that you create should be helping you to be more efficient. And you need to be efficient the more contracts you have, because you got to go back to the growing your business side. If you don't continue to do your lead generation, then your income looks like this. And I don't want to see that happen to any of you. I've done that. Learn from my mistake where you're busy running your business, you're busy with your contract to close, and you haven't lead generated. Then you close everything. You have no income coming in until you get that wheel going and filling your sales pipeline all over again. So that would be probably the biggest best practice, is to keep that stuff tight so that you don't forget about the growing your business part. And then you learn as you go. So every experience that you have, like if you have a challenge on a deal, that might create something that you might have to add to a checklist. Who has some best practice, business practice for managing the deal?
Susan, this is Johanna.
Hi.
Hi. What I do, because everything is so virtual right now, with contracts, is I still use Dotloop. So I'll write everything out and send it to the client in view only format. And then we have
they have to look at it.
That they have to look at it. And we're on the phone, we're, Zooming or on the phone together, going over each line. And then I'll send it as, having the ability to sign. The other thing on what you just finished with of experiences, every contract is different. Every situation, you may finish one and say, well, I'll never let that happen again, whatever, hiccup there may have been. But every contract is different from the next. So it is a continually learning experience.
Absolutely.
Of fine tuning everything so that, things are going as smoothly as possible.
Yep. That's a great one. And I like that you're getting on Zoom with them, because, body language is 55% of communication, and you can kind of feel and see if they're getting it, or maybe they have a confused look on their face that you might have to slow down or back up. So I like that you're getting on Zoom with your clients when you're reviewing documents.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? No. If you have questions, another best practice is calling your municipalities when you're going under contract, confirming things like taxes. That, that should be done every time, whether you have the buyer or the seller. You've got to confirm that those numbers are correct. A best practice is reading all of that documentation so that you're clear. If it's condos, if pets are important, is there a pet policy for the association? Like, there's just so much to every single deal. Don't rush. We like to, the market is moving so quickly that we like to move quickly without rushing, because when you rush, you miss stuff. And this is a really big deal to a buyer or a seller. It's a huge transaction that they're entrusting us with, and we need to take really good care of that, so that we're not creating problems that you have to put out fires for down the road. Okay. So did I get everything on there? So I have, where's my arrow? This next slide here, best practice and risk avoidance. Whew, boy, a lot of what we do is making sure that we're not at risk, a compliance risk. We're not putting our buyers and sellers at risk. So, and we also, we want this to be an awesome experience, contract to close, because we want those referrals, we want that repeat business. So we're kind of looking at our whole timeline and our whole process on where is the deal at risk of falling apart, and how can I reduce the likelihood of that happening? And inspections are one of those. I think that setting expectations of what's going to happen, if you're working with sellers, preparing them, having them prepare their home correctly, having them disclose things correctly. Inspections are definitely an area where a deal is at risk of falling apart. And lending, right? Lending is so important. We have to be super hands-on with the whole lending process. We have to know exactly what's happening, whether we represent the buyer or the seller. We have to keep our eye on the lending process, and how that's going, because that's an area where your deal could be at risk for falling apart. People do stupid things, and we have to reduce the likelihood of stupid things happening, like buyers buying cars during contract to close. That's happened, and it can kill a deal because it changes their numbers. So we're kind of, I'm talking to my buyers during that process. I'm in relationship with them. So I know if I'm working with, a first-time home buyer and the numbers are really tight, I'm reminding them not to do things like open lines of credit. I'm advising them not to buy new cars. Wait on opening that credit card to buy new furniture until you close. Don't quit your job. That has happened during transactions. Those are areas where your deal could be at risk of falling apart. Appraisals. Sellers, price your home correctly, run those comps, do your homework. If you're, if you are working with a seller and you don't want to underprice it, and you don't want to super overprice it, because we don't want it to sit on the market. We won't always be in this crazy seller's market that we're in. So pricing your homes right so that you can get under contract and do this contract to close piece. But financing is definitely a piece. Inspections is a piece where a deal can fall apart. Read the disclosures prior to making an offer. I'm expecting as a listing agent that you've read the disclosure. If you don't read the disclosure, don't assume that your buyer has read it. I have had buyers that don't read the disclosure, so I have to go over it with them. If I don't, something could be disclosed. We get to home inspection and they're shocked when they shouldn't be, on something that was disclosed. Sometimes a disclosure might make a property not work for them. If they have to have central air, and you have a forced hot water system and there's no ductwork, how are you going to get central air in there? That's super important to your buyer. So I'm reading the disclosures, I'm learning about the property, I'm reviewing that with my buyer. I'm reviewing my disclosures with my seller to make sure that they filled them out correctly. They don't always know. And we want to be advising them so that the best that they can do up front will make it so that they have a smoother contract to close process. We're looking for issues that could happen or for a deal to fall apart because they're not. What are best practices to keep the deal alive? Communicate. We've talked a lot about communication. Keeping those lines of communication open are important. A best practice to keep the deal alive, don't take things personally. People have very high emotions right now, and that can mean the other agent has things going on in their life. They might have kids remote learning. They might be working from home. They might have health issues. We don't know what's going on in their life. If they're snarky with us, don't be snarky back. Your best practice is to always be calm and to never pass that on to your buyer or seller. If you're getting aggressive, snarky, yucky communication from your co-broke or or only emails, not phone calls when you should be getting phone calls, and you're frustrated by that, we don't pass any of that along to our buyer and seller. It's our job to shield them from that because it's not going to serve them. What's going to serve them is to get this deal to the closing table with as little stress to them as possible. We take on the stress, we don't pass it on. We filter that stuff out. What tasks have deadlines and what are those deadlines? That is something that we have to be mindful of because we need to avoid risks of missing deadlines. So that's where those checklists are coming in. That's where those, it's okay for you to create smart plans for yourself in command so that you're being reminded of those deadlines and those tasks. You just absolutely cannot miss deadlines. I have aged co-brokes when I have a seller, I'm having them miss inspection deadlines, finance deadlines. You're putting your client at risk if you miss those deadlines, and it will end up costing you money because you're going to have to make good on that stuff. And it's going to cost you money because you'll be creating a stressful situation for your buyer or seller, and they're not going to refer you. They're not going to use you again. We're doing too much work to get to contract to close to risk not getting future business from them. How can you help manage other parties involved in the deal? By calling them once a week or emailing, by being in communication with them. You can help, I've told you, I like to drive the bus in both directions. I like to be looking at what they're doing. I'm not going to wait. If they have a deadline coming up, like for example, if there is a finance deadline or a finance commitment deadline in your contract, I'm asking them a few days, a week out, a few days out, how are we looking for that? Are we expecting that to come in? I'm looking to make sure that they're doing their job and that we're doing our job because I want to create that positive feeling for my client. Don't quit. What did I put? Finance buyer relationships with the lender. Coach your buyer on getting docs to the lender throughout the whole transaction. Right from the beginning, we talked about that, about reminding your buyer on on getting those documents in. It's equally as important to keep doing that during the whole transaction. And what I tell them, if once we're into the transaction, if you're not getting your documents into your lender, if it's going to take you 4 days to get that bank statement in, you might as well add 4 days to the end of the transaction. That's what you're risking. So you want to prepare them for that. And again, keeping their credit quiet, that's you want to avoid that risk of anything happening to them. Who else has some ideas on keeping the deal from falling apart, how to reduce that risk?
maybe when you get like, or when you're deciding on an inspector, like the don't want like an alarmist one if you have like a specific personality that would like feed off of that
Absolutely.
on the buyer side anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to know who they're using, right?
Mhm.
And that helps. That helps.
If I may, years ago, I bought a house on the water and on Eastern Long Island. And though the agent was a friend of mine, it took forever to close. And no matter what I did, I was unable to find out when exactly the house would close. And it turned out that it was rented out for the summer. I had no idea. It was incredibly frustrating and I was just stuck and angry, and there was nothing I could do about it either.
Yeah, that is. If working with friends and family it can be very challenging.
Absolutely.
For sure. You almost want to do twice as much to make sure that it goes well when you're working with friends and family, for sure. And that's a good risk avoidance too. If there's any inclination that the house has been used with a tenant or a VRBO or something like that, to find out if it's going to be rented, if they have leases, getting copies of leases. Leases transfer with the property, so we want to avoid a risk for our buyer if you're in that scenario. And I know Erin is monitoring the chat, but so don't count on me to look at the chat, folks. If you have something, just jump right in. So this one is great. Your co-broke relationships. I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I'm so passionate about having a good co-broke relationship. Because it's in my client's best interest for me to have a good reputation in the marketplace. It's in my client's best interest for me to have a good relationship with the co-broke. Your emotion when you communicate will pass to the co-broke. So I want, if I am having a bad day, or if I am frustrated by something that's going on with the contract, I have to make sure that I am calm and positive and problem solving when I'm communicating with that co-broke, because I am making extra efforts not to pass on that person's emotion to my client, but they're not doing that. They're very frequently going to pass on your sentiment to their client. So if I'm aggressive in a negative way, if I'm complaining, if I'm being at all inappropriate or unprofessional, they do pass that stuff on. You can't let that happen. You have to have a good relationship with your co-broke. I want there to be a win-win with that co-broke. I might also have to communicate to them in a way that without them knowing I'm doing it, I want to coach them on how they're going to present something to their person. So if I have the buyer and they have the seller, and there's some problems with the home inspection, I am putting stuff in writing, but I'm also having a verbal conversation, and I need to verbalize that to them the way I want them to verbalize it to their person. If I just say, yeah, my folks need a new furnace, and that's it, they might need more information. It could be, you know what, we had the inspection, the furnace is on its last legs. My folks don't have the funds for a new furnace. It's a big area of concern for them. We're approaching winter. Whatever the scenario is, I need to make sure that I'm communicating that to the co-broke so that they're communicating it the right way. A line that I find really effective when I'm communicating with a co-broke, especially around something where we're going to have opposing views, is I would say something like, Rhonda, your seller feels this way about this situation and they're right. My buyer feels this way about this situation and they're right. What we need to do is work together to find out how we're going to make this work for both of them. So I'm acknowledging that your seller has a good point or your buyer has a very good point. I understand that. And my person has a really good point too. They just have different perspectives. How are we going to come together so that they both are getting a piece of what they need to make this happen so that we can move forward. And now what I'm doing is I'm building, I'm a team with that co-broke, right? We both want to get to the closing table. Neither one of us wants this deal to fall apart, but we both have to represent our client. So we have to do right by our client, and sometimes that means getting your client to give in to the other side when it's appropriate. And so that's a great line. Your client has their perspective and they are right. My client has this perspective and they're right. Let's come up with a solution that can work for both of them. Tone with your co-broke is so important. And can't tone come across in an email or a text? Totally. I want to make sure that I'm communicating with my co-broke so that my tone is being received the way I want it to. And that's a written tone or a verbal tone. So that's why my emails are always, hello, Katie, this is Susan. I hope you're doing well. This is what my community, and then whatever I'm communicating about, and then have a great day. Let's catch up and talk about this later. I'm being friendly, I'm being approachable, and I'm being a problem solver when I'm communicating with them. Tone is super important. This business is not personal for us. It's business, but it's personal for our clients. And it's emotional for our clients. But for us, it shouldn't be. It should be just business. So I'm not taking things personally when someone's mad with me. Or if I do, I'm going to give myself 60 seconds to be upset with it, and then I'm going to be done. My husband calls it the 60-second funeral. If someone does something that you're like, really? I can't believe they did that. We'll give ourselves, he'll say, have a 60-second funeral. So you have 60 seconds to be upset about it. Then move on, because it's not going to serve you or anybody else well to be upset about it all day long. Never write something that can hurt your client. Never write something in an email or a communication verbally to the co-broke that will hurt your client, like being emotional. Like I've had agents say, I'll say, this is, my client's looking for this. And they'll say, yeah, no, they're not going to do that. How do you know you didn't? I haven't even had a chance to go ask them. They might be willing to. So if I have a co-broke saying their party, their side is making a request, I'm not putting judgment behind that. I'm not answering for my client. My client might not mind doing that. Here's a great example. I might have a seller who is very handy and in good health. And I might be working with a co-broke who has a buyer who's an older lady that doesn't know how to fix anything, that really physically can't do a lot of that of maintenance stuff. So they might be asking in a home inspection for things that I don't consider appropriate. It's not up to me. My guy might say, you know what? I know that's an older lady. So if I had the buyer, I would call and communicate like this. Hey, Sarah, I know that we're responding. This is what we're asking for a home inspection. It might not look like a significant issue. However, my buyer is an older lady. She physically isn't able to climb stairs or whatever. And for her, they are significant. Now, I'm telling her that because that's how I want her to communicate that. I'm coaching her on what to say, right, to the seller. And if I have the seller in that scenario, they might be the kind of person that is like, I absolutely will do that. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to fix these other 4 things for her. I've had sellers do that because they care. They want to pass. A lot of sellers want to pass that house off in a great way to the buyer. So am I going to judge that? Am I going to say they shouldn't do stuff? Nope. I don't hold judgment on that stuff. I give them the information and I let them make up their mind. Of course, there's scenarios where you're going to jump in and give advice, but I think it's important not to have judgment on your co-broke. With your co-broke relationships, sometimes I'm delivering bad news to them. They're not going to want to take my call. they're not going to want to hear what I'm going to have to say. And I might know that going into it. So I need to give them a chance to vent. And then bring them back to, I'll give them let them have the 60-second funeral, right? Like give them a chance to be not happy with what I'm coming to the table with. And then bring it back to a solution, on working together to find a solution. Where could the deal be at risk if you don't work with your co-broke? Tons of places: inspections, financing, the same places that we just talked about on the last slide, really. It could be on, if you're a seller to find suitable housing, there's so many scenarios. Seller to home sale contingency, right? Don't we have to work together if your seller has to, if I have a buyer and there's a home sale contingency? Of course, it's probably easy to sell the house right now, but what if it's not? Like we have to work together. So those are places where your deal could fall apart. Let people be upset and then bring them back. The calmer you are, the more likely for you to get a better response from them. The first person that yells loses, generally. Super important, your co-broke relationship. It's super important for this deal to get to the closing table. It's super important for your future clients. If you have buyers and you're an excellent co-broke to work with, your future buyers need for you to have a good reputation in the industry, because you want those co-brokes to want to work with you again. If I am the listing agent and I have 4 offers and they're all pretty much the same, but I know one of them is very difficult to work with, that deals fall apart with them frequently, is that going to impact what I'm communicating to my seller? Probably. If I'm awful to work with, they're going to be like, yeah, you're not going to want to work with Susan Kenyon. But we have 3 identical offers with 3 other great co-brokes. So be the great co-broke. Even when you're working with difficult people, be the best agent at the table. Be the calmest agent. Be the problem solver. Stand up for your clients, but you get so much more with sugar than spice sometimes. So be the sugar. Any questions on co-broke or issues that you're having? No? Okay.
I do have a quick question. Is
Awesome.
it appropriate or good or bad if you're a new agent and you're working with a very experienced agent, like a 30 years in agent, and is it the right thing to do to say, hey, I'm kind of new at this, or is it sort of better for them to just believe you're doing it all, like what you're doing 100%?
Whew, I guess I could say yes and no. I mean, I've seen that be great, and I've seen it not be great.
Right.
I mean, you are what you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's anything wrong for them to know that you don't have a lot of experience. I wouldn't tell people when it's your first deal that
Right.
it's your first deal, just because they could be they could be thinking that I'm representing my client by taking advantage of you.
Right.
So what I would say is, have a mentor that is working with you to represent your client. Get help from your market center so that you're doing everything correct.
Yeah.
And just because you're a new agent doesn't mean that agent with 30 years in is correct.
Right.
So it's okay to question them when you're doing all of the other pieces right, like your communication is good, your tone is good, you're going back to them with good information. So I would say don't be afraid that people are going to find out that you're a new agent. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You won't be a new agent forever.
Yeah. No, it just feels it felt a little shady on my part to be like, oh yeah, sure, I got that, no problem, without being like, oh, this is my first transaction. I'll I'm figuring it out on the backside, but
Yeah, I would say
I
be
am.
confident. You know what you are doing? You're taking Ignite.
Yeah.
If you're taking Ignite, then you're probably doing a lot of other training at Keller Williams.
Yeah.
And that's more than what most agents do outside of Keller Williams. You probably have better training than some people that are in for 30 years. They might have super bad practices. So I would just go with you're doing a good job, you're training, you have people around you that are ready, willing, and able to help.
Yeah.
As a new agent, I would just don't promise things. Don't be a yes agent. Don't say, oh yeah, I can do that. Yes, we can do that. Get back to people. It's okay to say, let me get back to you on that, and make sure that you're doing the correct thing. That would be my advice on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And be in touch with your broker when you don't understand something. A lot of agents will kind of guess and try to get around things. Just be in touch with your broker. Keep in mind, if something should go sideways at some point, your broker's going to get called in for that as well.
Right.
So having direct access and questioning things that you don't understand fully can come back and bite you in a big way, but it's also bringing your broker into that lack of supervision issue.
Right.
So just be in touch.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, don't let them get a phone call about you without you having warned them that they're going to get a phone call about you.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, Nate, see the police coming up the driveway? They're here for me. So yeah, and I'm
Typically,
real
it's
big
the
on
sheriff.
semantics. So I'm going to recommend that you guys, if you are saying it, stop saying it. And if you haven't said it yet, don't say it. Don't say, I don't know, I'll find out. Do say, great question, Mr. Lindsay. I'll look into that for you. Right? You're making them sound wicked smart. Yeah, you're so smart, Mr. Lindsay. You're the sharpest marble in the drawer, Mr. Lindsay. Great question. Let me look into that for you.
Yeah.
Not like, I don't know. I'll look, I'll find out like that. And that's really what we're saying. And you got an army behind you to get the answer probably in seconds, because, your leadership and your teammates at your market center are a text or a call away. It's just think about the consumer on the other side hearing you say, I don't know.
Yeah.
When they handed their financial life over to you with probably arguably the biggest transaction, presuming that you're armed with, I'll find out. So it's all in how we say it, right?
Yeah. No,
Absolutely. That's a great script.
Client. It's just to the other agent that I feel like she can see right through me. I feel like she's like got me like, oh, she's a new agent.
Yeah, understood. I remember when I got started, I believe one of our Wiley veterans, Karen Mayers, brought to my attention. She goes, Lindsay, every time, and this is like in my freshman year, and she's like, Lindsay, every time you call somebody for a showing, they're looking you up in the multiple listing service.
Right.
And they're like, this moron has no idea what he's doing. Right. So they're scouting us out, and that's fine, because we're probably all guilty of that. The way I would sort of disarm that conversation is, Stacy, I really appreciate your 4,000 years in the industry. I'm probably thinking that, not saying that out loud. You smell like mothballs, Stacy, and I really appreciate your experience in the arena. What I would also, what I appreciate too, is that you understand where I'm coming from too. I love your 38 years of experience, and I'm sure you can remember back to your sophomore year. That's why I'm so grateful to be in this transaction with you. So we can work together to get our clients to the the winner's circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because whether they espouse our values or not, it's still universally should be, brokerage to brokerage, win-win.
Yeah.
Right? The Y4C2Ts, we happen to write it on the wall in the lobby. We should all be practicing that as a code of ethics, right?
Yeah,
So
no, that's a great way.
that's how I would disarm that conversation. I appreciate
Yeah.
that, Stacy. I understand you've been doing real estate since the Truman administration, and that's why I'm so excited to be engaged with you in this, because I know you were a sophomore once too.
Right. I'll leave that part out, but yes. that's
Yes.
a
There's
great
a lot
way.
of things I say in my head, and my heart, not out loud.
I
But
think like
go
a
ahead.
cleaner part to, or whatever. I don't know. I'm gonna soften your message.
Erin's gonna
Kim.
come in and fix my language.
Yeah,
I'm leaving.
I'm gonna soften your message. No, I'm gonna sort of make it more about the agent. So like, there's a place for all of us to be new in this industry, and there is a benefit to being new because you have a fresh set of eyes and you're learning and you're going to work really hard for your clients, and there's a benefit to having agents who have success and have an experience and have been in the business for a while, and we can all work together to for the benefit of our clients. So don't think of the fact that you're new as a disadvantage to yourself or to your client or even to the other agent on the other side. Like there may be some stuff that you're figuring out, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful in the transaction. Not
Right.
all new agents are bad at what they're doing, right? So please don't take that mindset like I'm new, I suck. Like erase that from your head. So,
Yeah.
and I think we've all been new at one point, and certainly within our culture here, we want people to be successful, and we're working for our clients, right? So if as an agent on the other side needs to figure something out, and we all want to get to the closing table, like
Yeah.
Susan said, I think a couple minutes ago. So,
Yeah.
leaning into your resources and just keeping your mindset of I'm working for my client and I'm going to get what I need. And
Yeah.
so
And
that's,
I'm actually learning from her too. Like she's very good in her
yeah.
communication. So I,
Yep.
I appreciate her experience, and it's good for me to see and watch and be in it with her. I just didn't want to feel like a minnow in a shark pool,
I'm
but
glad you got a good first agent then.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah,
great.
we don't always
And
get
just-
that.
Just be very careful on those conversations with
Yes.
the other agent, because we just issued consequences to an agent in a transaction, and it was a very complicated transaction. But she, on more than a few occasions, told the other agent, I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't understand what we're doing. The biggest problem is she saying that is one thing, not going immediately to the broker to bring the broker into it is now a consequence for both the buyer's agent and the broker.
Yeah.
So standing there and being like, oh my God, and not that you would do this. Again, all these examples are kind of on the, weird spectrum.
You have
out
the
there.
best examples, Sue.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it's direct hearings and who's testifying to what. And if you sit there with another agent and start talking about, oh my God, I haven't the slightest clue what's going on, and that's brought into the situation, not saying it, just saying it and moving on to your broker might have saved that situation. But she remained in this situation for another 4 months, having no clue what was going on. That's going to get you a consequence.
Yeah.
And your broker's going to get one as well for not supervising you. So just play that carefully and think about the next layer of everything that you say and what it could do.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
Thank you for
right.
that. That's
good
but
advice.
Lean into your resources in your market center.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. We're so lucky at Keller Williams to have so many resources, and really our leadership wants us to succeed. I just think we're so blessed and lucky for that. And I know I'm grateful for it. I still use my leadership all the time. And when I need help, I get it. And I called my broker this week to bounce something off of her that I was struggling with. And there's doesn't matter whether you're new or seasoned, they are there to help us.
Keeps the sheriff's department off the front steps. So
Yeah, they have-
good. They're busy. They have other things to do. Let's keep them away from us.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else on co-broke relationships? I know I'm kind of beating this one to death, but I just feel so strongly about it. It's going to help your income. It's going to help your clients in this contract to close that you're in now, but in your future as in this industry for sure. Okay. I love this one too. Get repeat business and referrals. We work so hard, right? Lead generating, growing our business, viewing property, doing buyer presentations, doing listing presentations, putting people under agency contracts, marketing houses, showing houses, going to home inspections, getting contracts. We need to be getting repeat business and we need to be getting referrals. One of the strongest ways to do that is to give them an amazing contract to close experience. Sometimes it's not that everything went right. It's how you handled the things that went wrong that will get you that referral. It's handling things promptly with them that could get you that referral. When there's a problem, the problem's not going to go away by saying, I'm going to call that person tomorrow. Handle it immediately. Jump right in. Do it first. Put other things aside to handle an emergency. It will help you get repeat business and referrals. You need to wow your clients. You need, if I'm passionate about it, that's going to come through to how they're receiving it. I want them to know how excited I am to be going through contract to close with them. I want them to know that I want them to be confident that I've got this. I've got your deadlines. I've got your contingencies. I'm not going to let you miss anything. And I'm going to be doing that in a very positive, productive way. You have tools available to you. You have the KW app. You have tools that as you're growing your business, but you're setting aside time aside to then be working on your other things like your marketing. Now that doesn't take place before you're growing your business. You do your lead generation stuff first. But then afterwards, you do things like you need great buyer packets. You need great seller packets. You can use Command and Designs to do that. You have tech trainers available to you. If you don't know your resources on how to put those things together, go to your coaches. I've seen some amazing coaches on this Ignite. They want to help you. So put those things together. You'll get repeat business when you can be the source of the source for people. I am not handy, but I can find you a great handy person. I want people to come to me with any real estate related question, regardless of whether or not they're ready to transact business. If you know what, I have buyers that closed on a house 6 years ago. They still look at their listing cart every week. They don't want it to be shut off. They know they love that. You know what I love about that? Every time they open that, my name's on it. So when they have a question on maybe a house that's sold or something that's on the market or a repair or whatever, it's a way for me to be top of mind. However, I can be top of mind to them, however, I can be adding value to them will help with getting repeat business and referrals. So creating a vendor list and utility lists, have those sources available for them, whether it's, landscapers or plow people, maintenance, property maintenance. October comes around and part of my plan, my auto plan is I remind people it's time to change your batteries in your clock, in your smoke detectors. There's so many little things that happen all the time that you can be adding value to that will help you to be top of mind in a positive way. Plan a closing gift. This is a really unusual industry where we're doing all the work and we're buying the gifts. Get over it. We buy the gifts. Gifts work. There's and someone eventually is going to ask a question on what can you write off, what can you not write off. I'm not going to answer that question. That's a tax question, and I'm a realtor. So find your tax person. And if you have to get a gift and you can't write it off, get the gift anyway. Buy the gift. It will work. People come. I had a buyer. We helped them sell and buy. And while we're during the transaction, I said, "Why didn't you call the realtor that you used when you bought the house? They didn't buy me a closing gift." That was the answer. That was 100% the reason that they didn't use that person. So I find closing gifts are just part of the cost of me doing business. I'm a big gifter. I gift for referrals. I gift for closings. I gift for everything.
Can we go over some examples of what the gifts are? I'm guessing that it might depend on the transaction, but
Yeah, absolutely. I send birthday cards with scratch tickets in it. Every
Mhm.
client that I have ever done business with
That's
gets a
fun. I
birthday
like
card
that.
with scratch tickets in it. Why? It's an easy touch for me to remind them that they're there.
And it's fun.
And it's who doesn't like getting a card
And
in
a
the mail
scratcher.
with a scratch ticket? And when they win, they let me know.
Yep.
And it's not expensive. It might get them a cup of coffee, but it's the impact that I want to make. I give gifts for referrals. And it can be a shitty referral.
Yeah.
I'd still give a gift because their next one might
Kinda
be a really good referral
right. Like,
that
what are
they
we
thought.
talking for gifts? Like, is what I mean. Like, not to
I give gift
just to
cards
have a good
generally.
idea.
I
Okay.
generally give a gift card for a referral. I have stacks of them at my desk, and I have different kinds because I really try to make it as personal to them as possible.
Mhm.
If I know they're a golfer,
Mhm.
I have got golf gift cards. I've got restaurant gift cards. I've got liquor store gift cards. Who doesn't
Smart.
like
Oh,
those?
Very
hello
smart.
there.
That's right up my people's alley.
But you have to know that so make sure that it's a gift card that's not going to backfire on you. I florist gift cards. There's so many things. Just go to Walgreens or a
Mhm.
drugstore and
Stock
there's
up.
Home Depot gift cards, Lowe's
Yeah.
gift cards. Um,
Other
Kenya makes a great point too.
like,
Don't
what are the
forget, as she said, you might get what you view as not a great referral. It's still an at bat,
Mhm.
right? So if somebody gives you an opportunity to go to a kitchen table, I'm going to send them that gift card for Dunkin' Donuts $5, Starbucks $30 because it's commensurate, right? So if I'm sending them a coffee, I'm going to just
Literally.
say, to Mary O'Neill, Mary, thanks so much for putting me in touch with Sue Doyle. We met yesterday. I'll let you know how it continues on, because to a civilian, we have to thank them appropriately. Obviously, with an
Yeah.
agent, it's a referral.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
to the closing gift and the
Yes.
differentiation and the legalities around a closing gift, what you can claim, state limitations.
Mm.
And don't forget too, if they bought a $3.9 million house, the Lowe's gift card probably isn't going to hit home. And again, your closing gift from your team is one thing.
Right.
And if you created a relationship over a $3.9 million house, the housewarming gift could be separate and from you, right?
Mhm.
Yet still thanking them as a client. But so we want to make sure we're playing fair inside the lines of what's legal within our state, what's legal for you to write off as a closing gift for your taxes, and then above and beyond that, not forgetting that the person who sent you the opportunity, if we're always thanking them, if you ever took psychology, it's Pavlov's dog, right? The bell rings, the dog salivates. We want to make sure our friends and family are always salivating for the next cup of coffee. Right.
Yep.
Right. So I think
And
part of
especially
what
right now in COVID, thanks for the opportunity to meet with the Kenyans. Here's a cup of coffee. Hopefully we can have the next one in person.
Yep.
And put some scotch in it or
I
whatever.
send $25 to a person
Okay.
just for referring me, and then I send them a $100 gift card when they close. And I don't
Yeah,
care if
and
I can't.
the
I
only
don't
thing
care
we're
if
not
I
going to
can't
do is
write
we're
that
not going
off.
to advertise on Facebook. Friends, I'll send you a gift. We can't do that.
No.
No.
Yes. But
So like, let's
thanking
say we
people
close on
appropriately
like
for the
a $250,000 house. Like, what's the ballpark amount of a closing gift for that? Like, let's say $300,000 house. What, like,
So there's
$100
whatever
bucks,
you think is
300
appropriate.
bucks. I don't
Yeah.
know. How could I know that yet? What would you think is appropriate?
So it depends. And there are like rules with your CPA and stuff around what you can write off and things like that. So
Even just as a good human saying thank you.
I mean, $100 at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Personally.
No, that's what I'm
me
looking
personally.
for. You
It's
guys know what
different
you're
for
talking
you,
about.
and I can't write that off. But
Okay.
I don't.
Fair.
I consider it an invest.
Same.
I would rather spend hundreds of dollars a month on gifts than giving it to Zillow.
Yeah.
Because
me
I'm going to
too.
have a bigger impact. It's a
Cool.
cost of doing business.
Mhm.
You
Thank
can
you,
do
sorry,
other
I'm gonna
things too
dig
that could
deeper
be
there.
yeah.
So
They
a
could-
great
really
thing
good
to
idea the
think
other day
about.
on our, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say a great thing to think about too is affiliate partners. So businesses, local businesses, that was my favorite thing to do.
Good
I had a
one.
local florist that I worked with, and we would do things together. And so we'd do flowers, or an arrangement at the closing that I would have sent to the home, and then maybe again on the 1-year anniversary. There was a local food service business and a butcher shop that I would get gift certificates and I'd get a stack from them, and then they would bill me at the end of the month for everybody that used their gift certificates. Like I would do dinner for two or a dinner for a family, and I would get, do it up to a certain amount or whatever. So there's lots of opportunities like that. There's like a chocolate shop in Concord that I used to use, a Granite State candy shop, and I would do like a little package with them. So I liked to just work with local businesses and put together something special like that. But it's really, I don't think we did it based on price. I think we just did it based on, these are what do we think this client would like? So we
Whether
had
she
a lot
liked
of
you or not.
different,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of
I
different
heard-
options.
I heard in a
So-
meeting yesterday, someone was
Thank you. That's
giving
helpful.
solo stoves.
Oh, yeah, that's a
They're
cool
like 200. They're like $200, and I actually saw one working at Wachusett the other
They're
day. and
awesome.
It worked awesome, and I posted about it on Facebook just to see what people's recommendations were for size and whatnot. And one of the realtors that I was friends with on Facebook posted back that this was a gift that she would give people that was closing. So they have different sizes, so you could go buy, a $200,000 house, get the small one if it's a small yard. If it's $1 million house, get the big one. It's like $350.
Yeah, great point, Maddie.
What was
And
that, Tom? What was that?
Solo stoves.
They're called
really
solo
cool.
stoves.
It's a smokeless outdoor fire pit. They're like huge now. They're blowing up.
Yeah. That's a
Matt,
great
that's a-
idea. I might hijack that.
I know,
Oh,
I
it's
love
okay, I
that one.
hijacked it already.
I'm gonna go sell
Hijack
those.
away.
I used to use
Hijack.
that.
It's all about
I'm writing
R&D,
that
rip off
down.
and duplicate,
This
right?
is what I was looking for. Keep
I
it
was
up,
going to say
guys.
too, I know Erin just talked about, obviously sending her clients for a meal, and that's more of an experience. So I'm when I say this, I'm not trying to fly in the face of her. I want you to get away from consumables. I think the candle that will melt and the as good as the wine may be, it's going to get drunk real quick and it's over with. So maybe something a little more permanent. People are doing, we just talked about keys earlier. So if you're in New Hampshire and you have to track down the skeleton key that opens the house, getting the keychain on it with the coordinates of their front step, right? Or getting something like that that's going to be with them for a while, or even after the fact, if you take a picture of them with the sold sign on their front steps, and then a day later you're delivering the print in a frame for them to have. The consumable is fine, and I think if it's more experiential, like Erin sending her clients to dinner. If I bought a house in Meredith and you sent me to camp, I will remember that.
Right.
But I'm not going to remember you got me a bottle of Barefoot wine.
Yeah.
Couple of
I'll
words.
have
of-
a headache for 8 hours, but other than that, I won't remember it. So just I think consumables can sometimes not be the best bet. And back to what Maddie was talking about, Matt Waldron with the stove. Depending on what your budget is, that butcher block, that knife set, that thing that will be in the kitchen that they will use consistently, that
yeah,
will
we
be a
did knives
conversation
too.
piece,
Yeah.
right? Even and
Yeah,
if
when
you're
their
gonna-
friends
if you-
come over and say, "Where'd you get that?"
Yeah.
yeah, and
From
even
my
if you
amazing
brand it
realtor.
with your
Yeah.
logo for to be able to write it off, they can actually turn your logo in towards the subway tile and have the beautiful cutting board and the brand facing out. But it's
Yeah,
something
we
they're
did-
going to use on a consistent basis, and
And
it's not going to
Yeti.
melt.
Yeti mugs. We did Yetis. Yeti will engrave it. If you have a cool logo for $5, you can get them engraved with that.
Just be a little bit cautious and think in advance. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I had some clients that came to me and we were joking around one day and they told me that their previous agent, when they were selling and heading to the airport within an hour of closing, their agent did this very generous, very lovely thing, but the grill that was purchased for them for their new house became a little bit of an issue. So if your people are pulling up, I think it's a great idea to mail something to their new spot after closing instead of handing them something. That it's also happened for me that I saw an agent give a large print of like the local beach or something to people whose car was filled with stuff and there was no room to carry that thing. And they asked me, it was at our office, they're like, we don't know what to, like after their agent left, like we didn't want to be rude, but we don't know what to do. And I'm like, you know what? write down your new address. I'll ship it to you. No problem. But just like think about what they're about to go do.
Yeah.
Climbing on a plane with a grill, it's not going to happen. And also the other thing that I learned very early on is try to pick up on communications throughout your whole time in this situation of trying to figure out if they do consume alcohol before you give somebody a bottle of whiskey or champagne or whatever. Just in the event there's a recovering alcoholic that you're handing this to. Granted, they're adults. It's up to them
Great
to
point.
deny, accept, use
Yeah.
it, and re-gift
But it's not
it,
going to have
whatever.
the impact that you wanted it to if you get in that
Well,
scenario.
it's like
Right,
an
right.
immediate negative thought, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, we don't want to be rude. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I just know I would just die if I learned that caused an issue. Sometimes there's I'm off, like we signed all this addenda and I'm off to go put my feet up and have a glass of wine. There's usually a hint in there somewhere.
Ask
but
leading questions while you're showing them properties and then write it in their file so that you know.
Yeah, and just try to keep track of that to fine tune what might be appropriate for them and question the grills.
If you run into the alcohol issue at Market Center 463, I'm happy to swap it out with a bottle.
Yeah, and I've got a whole collection in my office.
We'll figure it out.
you
Doyle
know.
and I will take it right off your hands. We'll file it in Doyle's office.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
not
give
all
you a
those
tax
all those
receipt and
boxes
everything.
aren't filled with paper.
Susan, stop. Don't tell everybody.
Hey, your closing gift could be a service too. It could be, we've had houses cleaned for people that we know are that would be important to them. You could have landscaping done if that's important, and you know that the seller isn't going to be leaving the house in the condition that that you want your buyer to be receiving it in. You can do things like that too. Other gifts that I do, it doesn't, that would be for a closing gift. There's other things that you can be doing, like handwritten notes during the year. People love handwritten notes. I don't let anything leave my office with a label on it. Everything has to be handwritten. All the envelopes have to be handwritten. Even my Christmas cards, and I send out 400 of them. They're all handwritten. It takes me a while because nobody else will participate in doing that, or their handwriting's atrocious. But people like handwritten things, though, and not to say that you have to do that. That's just an example of what's important to me. So getting repeat business and referrals, I Facebook friend my clients usually after the transaction, just in case something goes sideways. So be on Facebook. Or do some of you not like Facebook? Get over it. Get over it right now. Go get on it because it will give you business. Be positive on it. And I'm joking with you. You don't have to, but
Said with love. Get over it. Yeah.
sometimes this is about business, right? If you're on Facebook, which I hope that you all are, and people that know John and I know that I struggle with this with my partner, be positive on it. Do not be political. Don't complain. Never. And it's the political part that we struggle with. Some people are, I just don't think that we have the right to use Facebook the way that other people use Facebook. It's a business tool. We don't want to give people a reason to disagree with us that they won't do business with us. So that's my personal feeling, that we shouldn't be political, that we shouldn't be complaining. We never bash other people on Facebook. It's just, it's not the right thing to do, and it's not good for your business. Mix up your Facebook posts. If you have a business page, I also put a lot of my stuff on my, I think it's okay to put it on your personal page as long as it's not everything about your business on your personal page. People want to see pictures of you at the closing table with your buyers and sellers. They like that, but they don't need to know every time you list a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom colonial. They don't want to know. And I don't want to be on my own Facebook page with all that stuff on there. So mix it up. They want to see you being a person. It's also like, the whole drinking piece or whatever. Put your recreation on there with limits. But it's a really great tool. We get a lot of business from Facebook. Whether, there's Facebook ads, which we're really talking about getting repeat business and referrals. There's stuff that you can put to your Facebook people through command. So use your tech director to help you with those Facebook ads if you're doing it to your friends on Facebook. Um, Coming from a place of contribution on Facebook is really great. So if you have things, they could be home maintenance related that would bring value to a lot of people, and they'll be connecting the dots when you put those things out that you're a realtor as well. So Facebook and social media can be your friend. So don't be afraid to dive into LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever your vibe is, go for it. Pinterest, people are home. People are doing home projects. There's opportunity for you to do lead generation on Pinterest. There's also great videos and YouTubes on how to be effective with using social media to grow your business. But it can be a great way to get repeat and referral business. Ask for the business. So when you're calling folks, getting repeat and referral business, you have to ask for it sometimes. It's okay to be on a call with someone and say, yeah, hey, Erin, who in your life do you know right now that might be looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Are you working with anybody at the hospital? If you're, when you're making your conversation, ask for the referrals. And, you have the Ford script, family, occupation, dreams, all that stuff. When you're in there, it's going to come up. Real estate's going to come up. Ask for the referrals. They might have a referral for you, but not give it to you unless you actually ask for it. That happens. They might be like, oh gosh, I got off the phone with Susan. I never even told her that this person just walked in my office earlier today looking to buy a house. Well, if had I asked, they probably would have given me that person's name. Questions on getting repeat business and referrals. The repeat business, but jump in if you have a question. The repeat part is by staying in touch with them. Use command. Use your database. If you're not using a database, start using one. You got to put notes about people in their contact so that you remember when you talk to them the next time what's going on in their life. You need to put reminders to call them, to send them a handwritten note, to friend them on Facebook, write on their timelines. You have to have those reminders in your database to actually remember to reach out to them. You know what really stinks is when you close on a house with a buyer and 3 years goes by and you go on Facebook and see that they just sold it with somebody else. That's not their fault, that's your fault. You gotta be in front of them all the time. So you need to mix up how you're being in front of your past clients so that you will be in front of them when they're ready to transact again. Home anniversary cards, I send them out every year. They could be in a house for 10 years. They're gonna get 10 of them from me. It's just an easy touch, right? An anniversary card, a happy birthday card, a holiday card, phone calls mixed in. Checking them out on Facebook and commenting and liking, offering value to them. When I might see something on their Facebook feed indicating that they're doing a home renovation project and are struggling with something, I might call with a resource to help them. I might see on their Facebook page that their pet died or somebody in their life passed away. I'm sending them a sympathy card. I'm in front of them with showing them how much I care about them. And I'm offering care and I'm offering value every time I communicate to them. That will get you repeat and referral business. Who has some questions on that? Handwritten notes are just powerful, people. They love them. I love getting them in the mail. Okay.
I got one from my dad yesterday, and
You did?
a thank you card. It's on my desk.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got a thank you card from my dad. But
That's
it
so
was,
cute.
yeah, right. And just for something that I did for him. And so, I mean, like, don't overthink the thank you card. Like, I talk to my dad all the time, but for him to actually send me a little thank you card. It meant a lot. So
Yeah, you see someone gets a promotion at work,
yeah.
or their kids are doing really great in soccer. I mean, send them a card. I love seeing your kids growing up on Facebook. Thank you for posting happy pictures of them. It really made my day. There's 1,000 reasons to reach out to somebody to show that you care and be top of mind.
I
Thank
was
you,
very
guys.
excited.
This is a great reminder. For many years, and I am behind on this, fully admit it. I would keep every box of thank you notes, and I'm kind of a paper snob, card hoarder. I would keep all of that at the office and then not let myself leave for the day until I had written every note that should have been put out that day, because otherwise it's 6 months later, and that's still okay. But it was a routine of mine that I can't blame it on COVID, because it makes no difference really, but I got to get back into that. So thank you for the reminder. Like, hey, Sue, they take 2 minutes a piece. Time to get back in and not let yourself go out to the parking lot until you've done your notes for the day. So thank you all.
I'm
for
right
that.
down the hall, Doyle. You don't even need to
I
use a stamp to
know.
send me one.
Sue, you're
So
not that
rude.
terrible at it. You sent me one a couple weeks ago, so you're not that
Aw.
terrible at it.
Well, I'm not as good as I traditionally am. And Lindsay, you have no complaints, buddy. I bring you a beverage, so they're equivalent.
Yeah.
But I'll give you some paper if you want it. I got lots of it in my office.
Yeah, I've been down there. I know. The Barney Miller of real estate. Yeah.
Hey, you know who else you need to be reaching out to with cards, guys? Is your vendors
Yes.
and your affiliate partners. They work hard for us,
Yep.
and we want them to keep working hard for us. So show
And
them some love and appreciation. If you're gifting, and it's okay to gift those people too, because they are working hard for us. When I have a challenge, they're going to take my call because I'm so good to them, and I'm heartfelt about it. I'm not just calculating about it. I really believe in it, and I'm transparent about that. I want to be transparent about how much I appreciate them. To
and
them.
leadership too.
And
I mean, our
leadership.
leadership and admin staff, for those who aren't in office all that often, and whether pre-COVID or presently, that is a machine that runs seamlessly with a ton of effort on all
Yeah.
of the things needed. And I think we need to take a step back sometimes and just remember all of the things that they do for us every single day, never with a complaint, always, I got this, I got you. Don't forget your leadership and
your
admin
staff. Yeah, your
staff.
MCA office and
Oh my
the
God, all of them.
receptionists. I mean, they
Yep.
work really, really hard.
Yep.
And they're always so happy. They smile all the time.
They're
I'm like,
always
"Does your
so
face hurt?"
happy. Yes. And it's amazing when you are in an office a lot. You get to learn pretty quickly, like, oh my God, they're all just working their butts off every single day. I've never once heard a complaint from anybody, even when it's not when they probably were rightfully so could have complained about something. Nope,
Yeah.
we're going to do it. We're going to get it done. So please don't forget those people who
Swing down later
are-
today, Doyle. I have a list.
Okay, yeah, let's go. Just tell me what to bring with me.
Hey, you can build a great business when you come from contribution and gratitude.
Yep.
How good do you feel when you're showing gratitude to people, when you're writing those thank you notes and those handwritten notes, and you're showing you care? You feel good about yourself. So, use it for that way too. Whatever's going to rock your boat and make you really want to go out and do that. We go through periods in our office where we want to focus more on the gratitude, and so we'll say, okay, every day everyone has to send out 5 gratitude cards. We don't even know who they're going to be to yet, but you got to do it before the end of the day. They're sitting right on the table, right on your desk next to your computer, so that you can easily pick them up. there's lots of little tricks, and you can Google the heck out of that stuff to reminders on how to do that. You can even Google the messages that you want to write in there. You know what? I keep a Word doc on my computer with messages that I like, because I struggle sometimes with what to say in like a sympathy card, because I'm a crier and I want to say the most appropriate thing. And sometimes the sympathy cards are a little bit harder for me because I want to be heartfelt about them. So I keep a Word doc with some things to write in cards, things on like thank you things for vendors. Like there could be a plethora of things. Sometimes I'll receive a thank you card and someone will have written it and I'm like, oh my God, I love that. And I'll put it on that Word doc so that I can hijack that and use it. Because if it made me smile, it might make somebody else smile. So there's lots of things that you can do, but the cards, the gratitudes, the gifts, use them as tools in your business, and they really can help you with the getting the repeat and the referral business. And I have a quick story for you on the referrals. There's a husband and wife couple that we have worked with, and they send us a ton of referrals. My referral thank you cards that I put the gift cards in, it says right on it, thank you for the referral, because I'm reinforcing to them that they referred me and that that's what this is for. Because I want to make ambassadors out of them, right? I want them to keep doing it. And they're big, so they're bigger than a normal card. And they each refer us all the time. And sometimes they compete on who's going to get the the most referral cards, because I've had to send them out both referral cards in the same week. And they put on Facebook that it was a joke who was going to get the most referral card gifts from Susan and John. So it can be fun too to do those things. And there's some strategy behind them. So have fun with it and get people the gifts that are going to resonate with them and put smiles on people's faces.
You know what heard a long time ago, more on the thank you note as opposed to gift, but I had, Lindsay will laugh. He's going to be like, oh, Doyle, get off screen, please. Right out when I was brand new and had just finished off my order for a custom thank you card, thickest paper on the universe. I think it was like $800 or whatever. Somebody out there did a training and they were like, you know, why just go to TJ Maxx or wherever? They have thank you notes for $2. Don't, you know, there's no need to have it branded and all this specialty. Meanwhile, I've got this like gold emblem with a gold envelope and it's like, oh my God, that's the best. Nobody cares.
Christmas tree shop. Yep.
Nobody cares.
Content inside that matters. That handwritten factor is where it comes to play.
Absolutely. I'll never forget that. I literally just placed this order and I was like, oh dear God. So yeah, $1 a box somewhere. Who doesn't matter?
Yes, use those coops.
And I know I'm totally behind here schedule.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you it's 12. It's 12:12.
12:12.
I'm giving you a time check. I'm
gonna buzz through and just wrap this up then. But use Command and go to opportunities. Use your tech trainer. So I'm not going to get into Command today because
we'll
I'm
have
out
Robert
of time.
here tomorrow for everybody.
Okay.
We're going to hit some tech tomorrow at 9:00 right back here. Same link.
Okay. So I think a lot of this other stuff I can just pass by. You can do the buyer's guide, the seller's guide. And if anyone has an aha or anything else that they would like to share, please go ahead. We have just a couple minutes.
This is Jennifer Markell. I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you're sending your thank you cards, are you putting anything in that, like your business card or anything? Or are you just keeping that completely personal into a thank you card?
I generally don't, because I don't want to be shoving my business down their throat. I want to be personal.
Yep.
However, if there may be times when it's appropriate to do that.
Okay.
But in general, I don't. I keep it personal. I have Kenyon Team Realty on the envelope written out so they know that it's coming from me as from my business.
Okay. That's what I was thinking too, but I just wanted to ask. Thanks.
Yep. Somebody had put in the chat the 66-day challenge on the could be for the cards. That would be a good one to get you in the habit of doing that. Keep in mind too, guys, to still be doing your 10, 10, 10, 10 previewing homes.
10-4.
10-4. I guess I need to start.
10-10-10.
Yeah.
If they want to do 10 10s and then 4 4s, that's fine. They'll just accelerate the trajectory. You'll just take right off. It'll be fine.
10, 10, 10,
Yeah,
10,
right?
10.
Yeah.
10, 10, 10,
So
10, 10.
keep doing those, guys, and keep doing your lead generation, because it will, you want to make sure that you're growing your business every day, not just running your business. And I'm going to stop there, even though I know there's probably a little bit more. Keep practicing your scripts, keep lead generating, adding contacts, and having conversations every day. Thank you guys so much for
Thank you
sticking
so
with
much,
me for a
Susan.
long class.
Yeah,
Great
thank you so
class, thank
much.
you.
We're gonna put a wrap on questions and make sure. So if you have any outstanding questions, we'll hit those tomorrow so we can get you guys on your way. We're gonna hit some tech at 9 o'clock. We're gonna answer questions. We're gonna try to play matchmaker and get some script partners throughout the region, because Erin and I feel pretty strongly that if you can do it outside your market center and inside your time zone, it's more effective because you have less of an interpersonal relationship and you're more likely to keep them accountable as opposed to let them off the hook. So right back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock, we are going to do an additional session and sort of wrap all of this up for Ignite. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Susan, for teaching 3 times this time through. Probably one of our best agent instructors in the region. So
Triple
we thank you
threat.
for your time. Awesome. We'll see you guys in the morning. Have a great afternoon.
Also,
You guys are great.
I just
Erin.
want to add, some people have asked me for surveys for all the instructors. I'm going to post that on the Facebook group, and then we may even email it out to whoever has registered for the class. We put that all together just in the last 24 hours. So look for that on the Facebook group. Give us some feedback on the classes, and that will be helpful for us. So if you're on the Facebook group, you can check that out.
Yeah, if you've enjoyed this, thank Tim. And if you didn't enjoy this, blame Erin. That's what we're going to go with.
That
we can talk
seems
more
fair.
about it tomorrow, though. It's
Yeah.
fine.
You guys are
Thank
the
you,
best.
guys.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank
all of
you.
you. Excellent.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.